Please take your seats. The meeting is about to begin. Remember to speak into the microphone, as this meeting is being recorded for public record. Please stand by. We are going on air in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March 30th, 2026 meeting of the Public Safety and Neighborhood Quality of Life Committee. I'm going to pass it over to our committee liaison, Stephanie, to read announcements into the record.
Good morning. Today's meeting will be a hybrid meeting with members of the committee being physically present at the commission chambers. Members of the public who wish to attend this meeting or provide public comment in person may appear at the commission chambers. Members of the committee who want to participate or provide comment virtually during the meeting may join via Zoom. Today we have two addendum items that were added. We have addendum number 1, which is discuss the Green Jefferson Avenue bicycle lane with the Transportation and Mobility Department and Miami Beach Fire Rescue. And we have addendum number 2, which is discuss take action regarding renaming Venetian Way to honor Hazel Abrams Sipin pursuant to City Code Section 82-503. We will also be deferring item number 4, which is discuss regulations and recommendations surrounding micromobility devices. And those are all the notes we have for today.
Thank you. Is there a motion to set the agenda? Okay, it's been moved, it's been seconded. Can we show that adopted by acclamation? All right, so before we go into today's meeting, I want to just briefly outline how I intend to structure our meeting today so we can have a more focused and productive discussion. As I reviewed the items that we're discussing, it became clear that many of the items before us they're not isolated. They're actually, in fact, very interconnected items. So rather than taking them one by one or in silos, I thought it would be better, that we would all be better served by grouping them into certain clusters that kind of reflect, yes, that kind of reflect how these items actually show up in the real world. So, so today I'll be organizing our discussions into about 4 parts. First, we will be taking up items related to micromobility policy and enforcement. We're going to be talking about micromobility infrastructure and accommodations. Third, we're going to be looking at certain North Beach related items related to log cabin and the West Lots. And finally, we will take up the North Beach Affordable Housing Pilot Program. So my goal is for us to be able to have these conversations holistically because they are very much interrelated. Before we move into our agenda, however, I'm going to open up, as we always do, for the Sudnick Citizens Forum. Residents wishing to speak will have 2 minutes to speak. If you're on Zoom, I simply ask you to raise your hand on Zoom. And if you're present in person and wish to speak, you're welcome to approach the podium. With that, any members of the public wishing to speak at this time, you're welcome to approach the podium. I see Johan Moore has his hand raised on Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning, commissioners. I'm pleased to see that there is, in fact, dialogue around the Jefferson Avenue bike lanes happening, but I would make 2 critical comments. While this discussion is rich and important and should go forward today, I would ask that the commission or the let's say sponsoring commissioner of this discussion contact FPNA's chair, our convener, in order to place the item on our agenda, since this concerns our neighborhood first and foremost. I would also make the critical comment, as I very much look forward to the discussion as it happens a little bit later, that the consideration of either moving the bike lanes to another avenue or splitting them up with one on each side of Jefferson is something that should have been considered carefully in advance rather than having this conversation now. I understand concerns sometimes arise after a project is completed, but if in fact we're worried about the fire trucks, a legitimate worry, obviously, not being able to successfully maneuver on Jefferson, that is something that should have, I think, been obvious ahead of time. So thank you very much for placing this on the agenda. I will ask again, please, that you contact FPNA to make sure that this is on our agenda next Monday for community input. Thank you very much.
Any other members of the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none in Zoom, seeing none in person. With that, I'm going to close the Sudnick Citizens Forum. And let's begin by taking up items number 1 and number 2 together.
Okay. Item number 1 is discuss ordinance amending Chapter 70 of the City Code entitled Miscellaneous Offenses by amending Article 2 entitled Public Places by amending Division 2 entitled Bicycling, Skateboarding, Roller Skating, Inline Skating, Motorized Means of Transportation, Electric Bicycles, Mopeds, Motorcycles, Motorized Bicycles, and Motorized Scooters by amending Section 70-67 entitled Prohibited Activities by prohibiting the operations of motorized means of transportations in city parks. This item was sponsored by Commissioner Baugh. Item number 2 is discuss a resolution of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of Miami Beach, Florida, directing the city administration to create and deploy a specialized police task force to be more proactive, address, and enforce any violations of laws committed by rogue groups of individuals entering the city riding dirt bikes, all-terrain vehicles, bicycles, electric bicycles, and other devices in a reckless or unlawful manner in violation of various traffic laws, and with a blatant disregard for other road users and pedestrians. This item was sponsored by Commissioner Suarez and co-sponsored by Commissioner Magsi.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Commissioner Bond and Commissioner Suarez, for placing these items on the agenda. They're separate items, but I do think that they are connected because both deal with the growing challenge of how mobility devices, whether they be e-bikes and scooters or other off-road vehicles, are being used in ways that impact the safety of our residents, quality of life, and the experience of our public places. If any of the sponsoring commissioners want to state something on the record, and then we'll pass it over to our Parks Director and our Transportation Team.
Yes, I'd like
Commissioner
to.
Bond, and then
Thank
I'll
you.
recognize Commissioner Suarez.
I actually see these as fairly different items, and I'll let my colleague speak on his item, but this is about people using their devices lawfully, and we are working very hard to make it safe to be a pedestrian in the city, as well as to use your micromobility device safely in the city. And we have a long way to go on all of these points, but a lot of progress has been made already. This item came up as a request from residents trying to keep e-devices out of Flamingo Park. And I think the pinnacle of it was when it was reported that somebody on an e-device was using the track to circumnavigate in Flamingo Park, and that's wildly not appropriate. And so, you know, the crux of this issue with micromobility devices is that when e-bikes became a thing, they were legislated from the federal level as bicycles instead of motorcycles. And that's where a lot of this crisis of lack of infrastructure, legal infrastructure to manage these originates from. So in this neighborhood in particular, where there are so many resources on the roads with slow streets and bike lanes and you know, less trafficked streets anyhow, I think it's really important that we keep Flamingo Park for pedestrians and regular bicycles and put micromobility devices into the bike lanes where they belong. The more we see people using the bike lanes, the more we all collectively will get used to seeing them there. The more we'll be able to train drivers to share the road with these devices, and the better we'll get at doing this. We are a city that is leading the nation. Counterintuitive, but when we have done research with other cities around the state and around the country, we are pretty far ahead of the game in terms of trying to legislate and figure out how to share our space among all the constituents, whether they be on feet, on unelectrified wheels, or on electrified wheels. So I just, you know, parks should be for unelectrified devices, and bike lanes should be for electrified devices. So with that, I'll turn it over to
Well,
John.
Let me just recognize Commissioner Suarez, because I want to take these two items together. Because I don't see them as really that different. I do believe that there is one underlying issue, which is we need clear rules, and with that, we need clear and effective enforcement strategies. And
But may I just say one thing? We have a
Yes.
whole separate item that I've deferred, thank you for permitting that, talking about the lawful use of e-bikes. It has been something that Mark Fishman and I and folks from the police department, including the chief, have been working on for months. And that is going to talk about the lawful use. This item number 2 is about unlawful use. And so I do want to, and I think it's a really important item because it causes pandemonium. I think it's very important, but I see them as totally different items.
for now, I will grant you the courtesy, but Commissioner, I am the chair of this committee. And I'm happy to accommodate the requests of my colleagues. And as the chair of this committee, when I set a structure, it's for a purpose. And so in the future, I just kindly ask you to please respect that. John, good morning, welcome.
I'd like to.
We're going to separate the two items. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, the commissioner and sponsor covered it well, and the Parks Department administration is recommending that we pass this ordinance that would prohibit electrified means of transportation, or motorized in parks, and keep it just to foot traffic and regular bicycles in all parks.
Okay, let me just ask you something, because when I see this item, and I see we have a number of locations where we already prohibit the operation of these motorized transportation devices in parks. Is that correct?
I didn't catch everything. We're asking for a full prohibition within parks.
Right, so today,
Today.
right now in the city code, Mr. Attorney, right now in the city code, there is a list of locations where motorized transportation is prohibited?
Yeah, yes, Chair, that's correct. And specifically with regard to parks, they're currently prohibited in the interior pathways of Collins Park and also South Point Park.
Okay, and then I see in the code, for example, the beach walk, we already prohibit these devices. Loomis Park Promenade from Fifth Street to 15th Street.
Yes, correct.
The sidewalks on the east side of Ocean Drive between South Point Drive and 15th Street.
Correct.
Okay. The South Point Cut Walk,
Correct.
the Bay Walk, the Marina Walk, South Point Park Pier, and the Miami Beach Promenade, which is formerly Miami Beach Drive.
Correct.
And so then now this will, tell me the language that we're inserting into the code.
Well, what we'd basically be doing is prohibiting the operation of any micromobility device in any city park, specifically including but not limited to the track in Flamingo Park and the pedestrian promenade in Ocean Terrace Park, except for maybe, parking area or any other area specifically designated for the operation of such devices.
Okay, so I'm supportive of the item. There's just two things that I just want to be mindful, three things I want to be mindful of. I do see in Flamingo Park, I don't want to necessarily see these devices in Flamingo Park, but you do have an intersection in Flamingo Park, 13th Street. 13th Street goes into Flamingo Park on the west side, goes out on the east side, or vice versa. To me, and you see that natural intersection there. Then you see Jefferson Avenue. Jefferson Avenue that cuts into Flamingo Park. I don't want to interrupt that flow, so, that, I would like us to see, how can we facilitate and do enforcement? Because what I don't want is people who don't know better, and there will always be people who don't know better. All of a sudden, they're cutting through Flamingo Park to get to work, to take their kids to school, and all of a sudden, they're engaging in activities that is a violation of the law. And that's why I see this interconnected, these two items, because in essence here, we're making a prohibition that if someone violates this prohibition, they could potentially fall into the category that we're trying to address in item number 2. And so I would like to have some sort of leniency as it relates to Flamingo Park, the intersection that's created there, not in the green space itself, but on the concrete that, extends south to north, on Jefferson Avenue, then east to west along 13th Street.
So with all of the micromobility items that we've been working on for the last 2 years, there's a huge amount of education when we initiate a change, enforcement to intercept and educate rather than penalize people. And it's really when we have repeat offenders that then it becomes an enforcement item. We've been really successful. Julio Blanco's here someplace. There he is. Super successful with this approach on the beach walk, where we've had, and Julio has the statistics, but we've had very few repeat offenders, and the amount of usage of e-devices on the beach walk has been cut back dramatically through education, enforcement, reinforcement. And so the approach is not to punish people, but to educate them.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, I'm going to recognize Commissioner Matheus Salinas, who's a committee member, and then Commissioner Suarez.
I agree, Commissioner Fernandez, with you. I think that I would prefer to have Flamingo Park be exempt from this, because I do think that it is a cut through for folks as long as they stay on the concrete to get east to west. So if the item sponsor would be amenable to exempting Flamingo Park, as well as, what's the name of the park that's connects Rum Room to that Collins,
Collins
the
Canal
path?
Park. I
That
have it on
one.
my list of items too.
Okay,
Here. Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay, so if we could just maybe, in Collins Park as well, so if we could look at those, I would be much more supportive of this item.
And I
Thank you.
agree with those, because Collins Canal Park stretches from Convention Center Drive all the way to Washington Avenue. And then you have, along the Botanical Garden and along Collins Canal, you have, there's like a promenade, what do we call it? And so I agree with you, Madam Vice Mayor. And then Collins Park, what would be hypothetical Liberty Avenue, that connects to the new promenade that's been created there. I think those are two important exceptions to this proposed ordinance, in addition to that cross intersection in Flamingo Park. Commissioner Suarez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe police can answer this. Do you guys have any data on any accidents related to e-mobility in Flamingo Park?
No, sir, we don't have any data on accidents involving
Okay, so-
e-mobility in Flamingo Park
Thank you.
because
So you don't have any actual data to suggest that this is a problem?
Alex?
we do not, sir.
Okay. So, what I think Flamingo Park is different, why I think Flamingo Park is different than the beach walk, for example, is that, Flamingo Park, as the chair said, is an intersection of really a residential neighborhood. The beach walk could be a composition of tourists and residents, but in Flamingo Park, it's really just residents. And if you look at how it's set up, it's a dead center in the middle of Flamingo Park, obviously. But we just built one of the best bike lanes on Jefferson Avenue, which intersect into the middle of Flamingo Park. And so what you're telling, micromobility users is that once you get, and Jefferson only spans, or it gets cut off from 5th Street, or really 6th Street to 11th Street. And if you're taking your kid to school, or you want to get somewhere safely within Flamingo Park, you're getting pushed onto the street. You're getting pushed onto 11th Street, and then you can take Meridian, which doesn't have any bike lanes. You can get to Euclid, which the bike lanes aren't very secure because, anyone opening their car door can accidentally, hit you. And unfortunately, what I think this does is it really just pushes the problem and the risk onto the micromobility users. And look, with all transparency, I'm a big scooter guy. I go there probably at least a dozen times. I don't go through the park, but I see people on their bikes, on their scooters, on their mobility devices, and I've never seen an issue in Flamingo Park. I understand Commissioner Bott said there was someone riding it on the track. Obviously, I'm not in favor of that. If they're riding it on the track, I think that's a whole other separate issue. But philosophically, for every scooter on the road is one less car on the road. And that's something we should be championing and encouraging, not making it harder. I'm okay with, with a little bit of regulation. Perhaps, in the park, you go no more than walking speed. I think that's a possibility. But to outright ban them, I just don't want this to be like a nanny state where we're telling everyone just no because we don't feel like it's the right thing to do, especially when we don't even have data to suggest that this is a real problem. So, look, I'd like to keep this. I mean, I'm not on the committee, but if this comes to commission, I'm certainly not going to be in favor of it. I think Flamingo Park is a very important intersection for residents. It's not really a tourist visit, place to go. So I'd like to hear what my colleagues have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Suarez. Commissioner Bott.
Assistant Chief Morgalla, could you explain why we don't have data on this? Because the UTC does not allow for this data to be captured?
So the Uniform Traffic Citation doesn't have a specific box for an e-mobility vehicle. We have to list it as no vehicle, and then in the narrative section of the UTC, write in that they were operating an e-mobility vehicle, and there isn't at this time, a requirement for documentation of crashes involving e-mobility vehicles. That is actually changing, and it goes into effect with the new state law in October. So any type of crash involving an e-mobility device, whether it's on a roadway or not, will have to be captured in a traffic crash report.
Right, so it's taken at least 2 years of working on this to have the state recognize that this data needs to be collected. Furthermore, a number of near misses don't get captured as accident reports, but we've all seen them, we've all been part of them.
Yeah.
Near misses are blessings in disguise because it means that you have not actually been hit or you have not actually hit somebody, but it doesn't mean that it still doesn't affect you. Moreover, and I don't remember if it came from Jose in the Transportation Department or Alex and your colleagues at police, but we have a ton of data anecdotally and from studies across the country that show the number of accidents of e-mobility devices, e-mobility v. pedestrians, e-mobility v. vehicles has skyrocketed. And that is precisely why the state is finally taking action. That is precisely why other states around the country are finally taking action. And I'm sure that in the next few years, we'll see it on a federal level too. So it is a complete fallacy to say that there is no data. We don't have it collected per se for this meeting, but we can provide that. And we will provide that because we have had it in other meetings as part of other documents. So this notion of there's no problem is incorrect. There is a problem. I'm very open to the idea of having the main thoroughfare of Flamingo, the cross streets, be open because it connects. But to have these e-devices on the interior paths of a park is dangerous. And I am not trying to be a nanny state. I'm trying to make sure that people who are strolling in a park are not going to get run over by somebody who's on their phone with their kids sitting at their feet on an e-scooter, as we've seen too many times. I mean, the accident reports that we do have when we get a SIN, I don't know if people read those, but they're horrific. They are horrific. So to pretend that this is not a problem is just putting your head in the sand.
With all due respect,
Colleagues, we're not going to do this here. And we're going to have a policy discussion focused on the item that's in front of us. PJ, do we have the image that I emailed you? All right, so this is one of the exceptions Commissioner Bond respectfully request for your item, echoing what the vice mayor stated, intersecting through Jefferson Avenue at 13th Street. If we can show the next image, PJ. The next one, Collins, we call this Collins Canal Park. And transportation, this pathway actually continues westbound Collins Canal Park. Is that correct? We have a shared use path along the Collins Canal and Dade Boulevard. So it would make sense for this, would it make sense to keep this area here open for devices?
Well, Dade Boulevard is a shared use path. So, however, it's not officially signed. If you notice, it's not signed or designated as
And that's
as
the
such.
challenge that we have.
Yes.
Yes,
with
okay.
Miami-Dade County.
And lastly.
But it is a
if-
continuation, to your point.
And PJ, we could put the last one. And there, of course, you know, what would be the continuation of Liberty Avenue through Collins Park, which of course connects to the promenade that we've developed there. And then when you go further north, actually, there you have the pedestrian bridge that goes into Flamingo Drive. So I'd like to propose if we could amend your item to create those exceptions.
So I'm okay with this and with the Flamingo Park major thoroughfare through the park. I want to make sure we have ample signage, Jose, and I know we can create that internally to make sure we've got shared use signage. I'm not okay with the Collins Park because it is not super well lit anyhow. It's not super easy to see what's going on there, and there is Dade Boulevard is a shared use boulevard, and we can effectuate signage almost immediately to reinforce that. So can we make a compromise on that?
I would strongly encourage the inclusion of the Collins Canal Park.
Mr. Chair,
I-
may I-
If I may, if I'm speaking, if I could finish my thought. I believe that's important. Collins, Dade Boulevard is a busy roadway. It is a very busy roadway, and it's not a safe roadway, I believe, for bicyclists, for anyone, frankly. And so I think just having that alternative there is very important, because you do have a lot of people that do ride their bicycles through there to connect to the hotels, to the restaurants, to all the different hospitality options that are there because they work there, not because they're going there even to entertain themselves. It is used. It is used by members of the public. So to the extent that I can support this item, and I want to support this item, I'd encourage you, if you could consider the request of Vice Mayor Salinas and myself to amend the item to include the Madam Vice Mayor and then Commissioner Suarez.
Sure. I just want to point out that all three of those locations are not really heavily trafficked by pedestrians, with Flamingo Park a little bit, but they're not, the beach walk is very different because there's so many pedestrians that walk on the beach walk. But the three locations that we've suggested it's just not heavily trafficked by a lot of foot traffic. So it makes sense to allow the e-bikes to go through there, because every e-bike that we have on the road, and I understand, that that's where they should be in general, but that is now increasing the risk of an e-bike user being hit by a vehicle, which is, frankly, much more tragic, that outcome, than a pedestrian being hit by an e-bike, which is also, unfortunate and should not happen. But the risk increases as we force e-bike users to be on the road, and I think those three areas are safer routes of travel for folks on e-bikes that want to just get to and from someplace safely. And if we force them onto the road in those areas, then we're now looking at bigger, risk. So I'd like to, Commissioner Bott, if you would be okay with keeping those three areas open to e-bikes. Thank you.
And then Commissioner Suarez, and then I want to bring the item in for Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I saw again, I'm not on the committee, but what you made an exception for is basically the whole park, right? Because just to the north of the T line is like the baseball fields and the soccer fields. And, and now we want to put more signage in a park. I mean, look, I understand we're going to finally collect data. Maybe maybe we should wait till we collect actual data. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but let's start collecting data before we start making these rules that's just going to confuse our code enforcement. Really, I mean, like, so they're going to have to now enforce where the e-bike is going or the scooter at this T intersection or on Collins Park. I mean, the one next to the convention center, that's it. I mean, yeah, I mean, if you want to say like you can't ride a scooter in the grass, sure, but I don't think that's the intent of this item. But I mean, what are we doing here? Why are we passing laws that are just basically unenforceable? And then you're going to have to create all this signage everywhere. I mean,
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, so,
I'm not on the committee, but I'd like to make a motion to defer this, or have somebody make a motion to defer
well,
this.
I don't want to keep on deferring items.
Well-
This item, it's before us today. I don't want to keep items lingering on the agenda. This is important policy. I do think that there is a need for it because we have parks in our city that do get overwhelmed by bicycles. And we do hear from residents and from seniors and from people with children that they do get concerned that this is an issue in our city. For example, I know people that have children and their pets and they don't want to see, for example, through Bayshore Park, they don't want to see motorized vehicles, especially in areas in a park like Bayshore Park, where you have a certain level of topography, or North Beach Open Space Park, or other parks. So I do think that this is important. I don't think that the requests that my colleagues are making of you, or that Commissioner Salinas is making of you is unreasonable. I think it's still a good piece of legislation. John, how many parks do we have in the city?
45.
Okay, so out of the 45 parks, we're asking for a minor exception for 3 parks, which I think it's not an unreasonable ask. I think it's very mindful, and I think it still maintains the core and the strength of this ordinance.
John, though, through the chair, if I may.
Yes.
This was specifically, the parks are already off the table for e-devices, right? This was specifically to include Flamingo Park. So therefore, do we even need this legislation? I don't think we do. And I
would-
just want to also point out to my colleagues that with just a downloadable app or a screwdriver, you can buy an e-device off of Amazon and take it from, a 19-mile-an-hour device, which is what a good bike rider will be riding, to a 59-mile-an-hour device. And so I would suggest that getting hit by an e-scooter or an e-bike as a pedestrian is catastrophic, can be catastrophic. We have seen it. You talk to the people who've been in hospital for 3 months. I don't want anybody to get hit. That is not the goal. The goal is to set this city up so that we have clear delineation between where you can ride a motorized vehicle
Yes.
and a non-motorized vehicle.
So if I
And
may,
so
Commissioner,
if I wanted to come back to
Commissioner,
the,
if I may.
to John,
because
so he can answer the question, though.
But if I may, because you are strictly focused on motorized transportation. And I want to ask the attorney to please come back to the podium. When we look at this item, Section 70-67 of the code, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. We're not just talking about motorized devices, is that correct?
Talking about motorized means of transportation.
Okay. But this section of the code, because my problem, my fear is the moment we open this up, and we make this illegal for motorized transportation, then it's going to be, the next concern is going to be, well, this prohibit bicycles, and then prohibit the roller skaters, and then prohibit the skateboarders. That's my concern. And that's why, for me, it's so important, because this section of the code generally speaks not just about motorized transportation, it also speaks about skateboarding, it speaks about roller skating, it speaks about inline skating, it speaks to a number of other things, including bicycling, and this is a very comprehensive part of the ordinance, of this ordinance. Of course, here, we're talking specifically about motorized transportation, but it's very easy for someone in the future to come in and amend this and say, well, we now solved the issue with the motorized bicycles. But now we need to go back and make I don't know, make roller skating illegal here in these areas. Or I want to go back and make skateboarding illegal in these areas. I know that that's not your intent, but it's what happens with these ordinances. We set up the possibility for these things to happen in the future. And so that's why I do believe, it's important to make these exceptions, to make it clear that these connector points, they serve as connector points. Yes, they go through a park, but they are a connector point, and to the extent that they're a connector point, we don't want to overburden, overregulate them, because then in the future, anyone can come back and say, now let's make other, things, harmless things like roller skating, but someone's gonna say, well, my grandma got hit by a rollerblader, skateboards, or someone could say, it opens
Anything
just
with
opens
wheels,
that door.
yeah.
So I would like us to entertain a motion to move this back to the city commission. Staff is recommending this item.
Yes.
So I would like to move it back with a favorable recommendation, with a recommendation that we make the 3 exceptions that we've discussed here. I can make the motion, but Madam Vice Mayor, you mentioned some of these locations.
Yes, I would like to make that motion then, excluding the 3 locations of Flamingo Park, Collins Park, and what is the name of the park again? I'm sorry, the one that's north of the convention center.
Collins Canal Park.
Collins Canal Park, that's the one. That would be my motion.
So with a favorable recommendation with the exclusion of those 3 locations.
Correct.
Okay, is there, I'll second that. All right, and is there any members of the public wishing to comment on this item before we take a vote? Seeing none in person, none in Zoom, can we show this adopted by acclamation? All right, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Bond. It is a good piece of legislation, and we will build from here. With that, let's go to item number 2. And I wanted to take these together, but I understand, Commissioner Bond, that you wanted to take this separately. So let's introduce now item number 2.
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
is that my cue?
Yes, Commissioner Suarez.
That's my cue? Okay, good. Is police here come on, Danny. So Danny, well, I put this on quite a while ago, and I don't see these roving gangs go through parks. I do see them on the street. And we wanted to know, what could you do about it, right? I mean, I know, look, and it's unfortunately, they're all just like teenagers, right? And I'm glad they're on their bikes instead of doing other bad things. It's not like they can go to a water slide. It's a joke. What are we doing to really combat this sort of, very dangerous behavior on the roads, not only for people in the cars, but these children?
So good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. So this particular item encompasses a couple of different groups. There's the ones that are on motorized, gas-powered, non-street legal, that oftentimes fall under an umbrella of Wheels Up, Guns Down, that particular group. And then we have this other group that's kind of very loosely, not really associated, not really organized, that comes through periodically on the weekends. They were last here on Saturday. And I can relay to you how we handled it on Saturday, because it will become the model moving forward of how we're going to deal with these groups to avoid them escalating, fleeing, becoming even more dangerous, because we realize that the overwhelming majority of them are kids between the ages of 14 and 18. There are some adults that are part of these groups that we're trying to focus on the investigative path to get an idea of who they are and who's the organizers behind this. Because as this problem has evolved over the last 6 years, we've seen there's been instances where they were bringing kids down from Broward and Palm Beach County on the Bright Line, and then when they were getting in downtown Miami, giving them bikes and going off and riding throughout the city of Miami and Miami Beach.
Who's they?
Exactly, and that's the
But
key.
I mean, meaning, like, is it like an organization? You don't just give someone a bike.
They don't give it to them. They let them use it for the ride that day, and then they basically turn it back in. So it's identifying who the organizers are behind it, because there is a certain level of lawlessness that some of these kids engage in under the auspices of whatever organization is putting this together. So throughout the years, we've tried to give them designated areas where they could ride and do stunt riding. We've tried to organize it through PALs to give them a pathway to demonstrate their riding skills, because some of them are very gifted on a bicycle, but they're using those skills and those gifts that they developed to pretty much terrorize the pedestrians and the motoring public. So Saturday, when they came through, we had no notice that they were coming through. We have no intel that they're coming through. We find out they're here when they're here. And we were able to quickly mobilize our DFR. And
What's a DFR for the public?
drone is a first responder in the Real-Time Intelligence Center. And we started to observe what they were doing and utilizing the video feed to document the individuals within the group that were being the most egregious in how they were riding. And then they stopped at Flamingo Park for a little bit for a water break. Park rangers were monitoring them. As they started to leave Flamingo Park, we continued observing them, and then we observed some pretty egregious riding against traffic, riding on one wheel. They do this maneuver that we describe as, they basically play chicken with a car. And they're on one wheel at a high speed going towards a vehicle, and at the very last second, they avoid hitting that vehicle. They've done that in the past with pedestrians. They didn't do that on Saturday. But what we ended up doing is we observed the compounding traffic infractions, and then when they made another stop at Lincoln and Washington, we directed officers in to stop the one individual that we got the most egregious behavior on and wrote that individual multiple tickets, a 17-year-old. Then we took advantage of the opportunity to speak and engage with one of the adults that was part of the group and explain to them and point out the cameras that we have in the city and let them know that we're going to continue to use our technology advantage that we have in the city of Miami Beach to conduct enforcement. And every time they enter our city, if they continue to enter our city, we're going to continue to ramp up the enforcement activity moving forward. Now, that's
When you gave that ticket, was it a UTC ticket?
UTCs. We gave them 4 UTCs for every one of the infractions that we were able to record. And part of the problem we have is being able to identify the individuals that are committing the infractions, because many of them look the same from above. This individual had a very distinct shirt on. We were able to identify him. We were able to keep visual on him throughout. So we felt comfortable, the officers in the Arctic, articulating the probable cause for the citations that were issued.
And how did they respond once you told them, hey, look, we got eyes in the sky now, and this is gonna keep happening?
They were surprised. The actual individual that got the citations was saying, well, what about everybody else that was doing stuff? How come I'm the only one that's getting tickets? And we explained to them, well, you're the only one that's wearing the distinct shirt that you have on that we were able to identify.
I wouldn't really, now they're gonna be all wearing the same stuff.
Well, no, because then we'll have other ways to identify them. The purpose of Saturdays really was to convey to the group that if they come to the city of Miami Beach to engage in unlawful behavior, we have technological assets at our disposal to be able to conduct enforcement different than our neighboring jurisdictions.
So you were able to successfully stop them because they came to a stop. But, if time and time again, we see these sort of roving gangs just kind of willy-nilly on the street, is the police won't go, they won't pull someone over there because they're afraid they're just going to
It's
run
based
away?
on experience. So I was one of those guys in the beginning that was very gung-ho to stop every one of these guys and arrest them. And you quickly realize that you're highly likely, most of them flee when you try to pull them over in a traditional manner. And because they're young kids, they start to flee with a level of recklessness that is, they don't even realize they're a danger to themselves. So law enforcement owns the responsibility for any injuries that they incur to themselves or to anybody else when they flee like that. So we started to look at it from a perspective of, okay, let's try and monitor them before we had the technology, monitor them using bike patrol officers, monitor them using motor officers, which was very successful in the past. And to the point that when they would see that we had motors on a particular day that they tried to come into the city, they made a U-turn and they went right back to Miami. The problem is it's difficult for us to predict when they're going to come through. And the scheduling of the motors at the same time these guys are coming through is not something that we're able to predict simply because they're very haphazard with when they're coming into the city.
Yeah, but you have real-time cameras on the Venetian, right? which is mostly where they come from.
Usually they come across the Venetian. Rarely do they come across the MacArthur.
Yeah, so I'm assuming you guys have some sort of notification system where you see, more than 20 bikes in a row, it's coming.
I don't know if we're there yet technology-wise to make that notification. I know we have a 24-hour presence with an officer along the Venetian Causeway, so that's usually how we find out. The conversation of establishing the task force has created conversations between us and Miami-Dade and FHP, that there's times where we get information specifically with the Wheels Up, Guns Down group because of their level of organization and the methods they use to communicate. So we get a heads up when they're coming in and we're able to mobilize resources to be able to deal with them. The younger kids on the bikes have been more difficult to predict.
Commissioner Salinas.
Hello, Chief.
Morning.
Good morning. A couple questions. They always come in and out on the Venetian, or do they ever take a different route?
They have in the past come in and out through the MacArthur, but it's rare. Most of the time it's the Venetian. My understanding is they usually meet up in downtown Miami or in the Wynwood area, and then they ride across on the Venetian, but they don't always come to Miami Beach. Sometimes they'll stay on the Miami side, and the times that we've been able to have motors in the city where it coincided with them that we could get motors to the Venetian, when they see motors as they're hitting city limits on the Venetian, they make a U-turn and they head right back out.
Mm-hmm. And is there any type of arrestable offense that we can, the adults that are in the group over age of 18, is there any type of arrestable offense that we can arrest them with for
So
putting
we're
juveniles at risk?
We have multiple ways that we're looking at this now. We're not looking at it as just individual traffic infractions. We're kind of trying to look at it under the organizational umbrella and to see if we can reach the probable cause threshold to identify adults engaging in contributing to delinquency of minors and things like that. We haven't been able to get to that point because when we do engage the adults, they say, hey, I'm just riding bike with these guys, I'm not in charge here. So there's a lack of a claimed structure or, group affiliation and lack of a clear leader in the group. So we're moving towards that investigative-wise, but right now we haven't gotten there yet.
Thank you.
So, and just to build upon that, so you're not able to, you haven't found a way to be able to arrest someone for this. Are you allowed to confiscate these bicycles?
If they're using it to commit a crime, yes, we are. So if we reach the probable cause to be able to say they utilize that bicycle as an instrumentality of the crime that they're committing, then yes, we can impound it. Or if it's, in the case of the Wheels Up, Guns Down group, if they're not street legal that they're operating, then yes, we can impound those, and we have in the past when we've made arrests of those groups. So yes.
Yes. Mr. Dominguez.
So I've been seeing these bicycle groups for a long time. I live on the Venetian. Mark used to call it in. I have seen an improvement. They're less than they used to be. At its worst, it was during COVID, but it's still a problem. I know that residents on the Venetian call the non-emergency police. I text you whenever I see them and tell you exactly which direction they're going and what's happening. But the major offense that they're doing is a traffic violation, but it's a matter of catching them in the act. I know in the past, and you may have mentioned this, the Miami police will notify us when they're coming over the Venetian. Are there cameras there to see them as well on the Miami Beach side, maybe near the sign, so that our intel group, Arctic, can see them coming in?
So there are cameras on the Venetian that we can monitor. The problem comes in that the technology to alert us to look at that particular camera at that particular time with, X number of bicycles or something that we haven't gotten to that point technology-wise. So ideally, I would love for us to get to that point, and I know that the folks in the Arctic and our tech services folks are looking at different technological solutions that utilize AI to understand the normal picture that the camera is seeing day to day and then alert you to anomalies. So hopefully we're getting to that point, but we're not there yet.
Okay, so where do we go from here? What can we do to support the police department in its enforcement efforts?
So one of the things we looked at is to see if there was any kind of technological, innovative stuff out there that we could use to kind of disable one of these bikes if they flee from us. At this time, there's nothing out there that we've been able to find that's safe and accepted for us to use in the United States. We are,
But you said in the United States, that means it's safe to use in other countries?
other countries may have a different standard. So one of the things that was brought up at a commission meeting a few months ago was these things that were being used in Southeast Asia to stop mopeds. Unfortunately,
The roadway net?
it was something involving a net that was discharged at, either from a roadway or from another vehicle to
The
stop.
deployable nets to trap the wheels?
Right.
Right.
The problem we have here in the United States is that laws and any of the intervention items that are available to us are designed to stop cars or designed to tag cars, to track cars. When we start to involve ourselves in deploying some type of a device to stop an individual on a two-wheeled vehicle, a bicycle or an e-mobility vehicle or whatever, we elevate the risk of them falling off that vehicle and sustaining a serious head injury, potentially death, as a result of us intervening to stop them when the initiating factor is either a traffic infraction or them failing to stop for police. So the level of seriousness of what the offense is does not allow us to intervene with that particular method to stop them because of the potential for serious injury.
Do we have police officers stationed at the entrance to the city at our causeways?
Not all the time. I know during certain special events or during certain high-impact periods, we do have dedicated presence on 41st Street, on MacArthur, and we do have a 24-hour presence on the Venetian.
Because if I understand that our team is working with the technology that we have available at the Arctic to implement that artificial technology so that you can easily identify these groups as they're coming into our city. But if the technology is not there yet, I'm sure there must be, if we look at the pattern, I'm sure we can determine, these groups probably are not coming during school hours. That's it. They're probably coming weekends. They're coming weekends during certain hours and that type of stuff. Couldn't we have police officers stationed? Couldn't we have police officers stationed? One police officer stationed. And we know the issue is the Venetian Causeway. We know they come in by the Venetian Causeway. Have a police officer permanently stationed at the entrance of the causeway when we know that this is an issue, weekends mainly, so that as they see this come in, they can notify the Arctic. The Arctic can deploy the drone. The drone can follow them and communicate on the ground, to kind of like what we saw with a motorcycle that was stolen in real time. Couldn't we do something like that?
We can absolutely explore any and all possibilities to try and be able to get us that notification.
Don't we already have police officers assigned to the Venetian? Isn't there always, there's a permanent police vehicle that's on the Venetian Causeway? Is that vehicle staffed usually or no?
Yes, there's a permanent Venetian officer assigned on all shifts, 24 hours a day. But that officer is also responsible to respond to calls on the Venetian and to patrol the Venetian. So we can explore ways to have an increased presence on the Venetian during the hours that these kids have come into our city most regularly to get that earliest notification possible and also continue collaborating with Miami.
And just to make sure I understand, the kids are coming in through the Venetian. These are the kids that are coming in on bicycles.
Correct.
And are those the same kids that are coming in on dirt bikes and ATVs? Are they coming in through the Venetian Causeway?
No, and they've been even less predictable from when they're coming into the city. They've come in from Surfside southbound into our city along Harding and that area. So from the north to the south, they've come across 71st Street. They've come across the Venetian, not the Venetian, the Julia Tuttle, and they've come across the MacArthur in the past. So that one's a little bit harder to predict where they're going to come from. However, we do have better intelligence as to when they're going to be riding.
Okay. Commissioner Salinas.
Chief, the toll booth that's on the west side of the Venetian, have we explored maybe a relationship with them? That way they can notify when they're coming in and you can send a unit to prevent them from coming in, or I don't know if, but maybe that's a viable option because
Yeah,
they'll all
absolutely.
see them come in. And if we could connect with, I don't know if that's also Coast Guard or if that's the county that does that toll on that
Miami-Dade
side.
County.
Okay.
It's a county.
So then.
Yeah, absolutely, that's an option.
And then we stop them even before they get in and we say, listen, we're familiar with this and please turn around. I don't know if that's even legal to not allow them.
I don't think the bridge operator can turn them around, but he can.
No, but police,
they
like
can-
notify
yeah,
police and then police
We
come
really
out there
don't
and.
turn them around. We just make our presence known from the moment they're coming into the city. And when they see a motorcycle that can keep up with them and has the same agility as their bicycles and things like that, they realize they can't ride in the manner that they like to ride in. So they usually elect to leave the city. So it's not that we're telling them to leave, as they choose to leave.
Let me ask you something, Chief. Number one, and I've said this consistently over the years, I have always believed that we should have a police officer assigned to our main entrances. So whether it be on Collins Avenue or on 71st Street, on the Venetian, on MacArthur, I think it makes sense. As it is already on 41st Street, we have a high, police visibility presence on 41st Street, but on our other entry points, I think we should definitely have police officers stationed there at all times. I do think it sends a message of deterrence, a message that, you come here, expect to follow the laws because, we take public safety very seriously. So I do think we should have a police officer always assigned to the MacArthur Causeway at the entry points, to the Venetian Causeway. We have them on Arthur Godfrey, have it on 71st Street. I think that that's very important. But, I know that that also takes resources. And our resources are often very scarce. But I would venture to say, for example, with the dirt bikes and the ATVs and these groups of bicycles, as we've discussed, a lot of times they happen mainly on the weekends. And that's probably weekends. Our police are probably in more demand, I would imagine. Couldn't we partner, for example, I would imagine the school district, Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I would imagine their officers are busier during the week, because that's when schools are open, but they're less busy on the weekends and nights, when perhaps they are in less demand. Couldn't we enter into some sort of interlocal agreement, intergovernmental agreement, that where, we could partner with them, use some of their men and women, when we might be busier, weekends and nights? Because I don't want to take away from one neighborhood to now all of a sudden put a police officer stationed on the Venetian Causeway at the entry point. But, maybe, we could use resources that might be underutilized during certain times. And I'm just assuming, I don't know that they're underutilized or not, but I'm just assuming, schools is Monday through Friday. Why not, use some nights and weekends when we might need, every once in a while, some extra support?
Thank you, sir. So when we have utilized Miami-Dade Schools Police to supplement our operations here, we do have an MOU with them. We have to compensate them for the time. So the city hires them off-duty to help supplement our ranks during high-impact weekends. We can speak to them to see if that's a possibility, but the problem then becomes the financial aspect of it in having the resources to pay them the off-duty details. Now, we are moving towards being able to expand our traffic enforcement capabilities and things like that as more people come out of the academy over the next few months and years. And the plan that Chief Jones has outlined is to have more resources deal with traffic enforcement. So I believe in the concept of having resources deployed to be highly visible like you suggest and to set the tone when people enter the city, but also task those resources with being productive by conducting traffic enforcement in a high visibility fashion. So it's kind of getting the best of both worlds. People hit city limits and they see officers, highly visible, conducting traffic enforcement, and it sends the message that they need to basically follow the law and operate their vehicles at a correct speed.
Commissioner Dominguez.
These bicycle groups, some of them, they tend to be the same people that come, same kids that come over and over. Is there an opportunity to build a relationship and get an informant?
So I don't want to reveal any potential investigative options, but I can tell you that any and all options are on the table for us to have a better understanding of the organizational structure behind the group, who the leaders are of the group, and that could potentially be an option at some point, but we absolutely are open and exploring ways to be able to understand how this group is working and who the leaders are behind it.
All right, so I want to bring this in for a landing. I like Commissioner Mateo Salinas's idea of working with the operators of the toll booth. Even, I think they have a little office that's there, and perhaps entering into some sort of interlocal agreement with them. I think, and I would like us to bring an item to commission. I would like us to bring an item to commission at every entry point to this city. People need to be welcomed by law enforcement. I think it just sets an image. It sets a message. They all know that the LPRs are here and all that, or at least we all know that the LPRs are here. But the visual, the presence of having a police officer at every entry point is something that I've been mentioning for a long time. But I do think it's important. I would like us to bring an item to commission directing that, especially during certain peak hours, especially during certain hours when we know that these gangs are coming in. Commissioner Suarez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Salinas brings up a really good idea, and I don't know if this is something you have explored, but if you know that a lot of these, certain people within these gangs are committing some atrocious, violations that put a lot of public safety at risk, and they're going to be going on the Venetian, if you are going to be engaging with some of these bridge operators, perhaps when they're going west, you ask that west bridge to open up, and then you ask the east bridge to close, and then they can't go anywhere, and you don't have to worry about them fleeing, and they're in a contained area. I don't know if that's something that you guys are willing to try.
So that is something that we used to be able to do in the past, especially when vehicles were trying to flee across the Venetian. Unfortunately, they have declined to do that for us in subsequent years. But that was something that was
Coast Guard.
very, very used years ago. There was a phone call made to the bridge tenders to raise the bridge, and then we would catch people trying to flee
Why
the
do they
city.
stop that?
My understanding is that they say they're not allowed to open the bridge for that purpose.
Look, we've been having some issues with the Coast Guard, right, Commissioner Bott? I mean, they're very unresponsive, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, they're on furlough at the moment, so I don't.
Right. Even
know
before
that's-
that, maybe we can, would you be interested in having discussions with the Admiral at the Coast Guard station?
Yeah, absolutely. We're open to anything that's going to help us resolve this problem in a safe manner and have people riding legally in our city.
Okay.
So the takeaway from this item are three, and colleagues, feel free if there was anything else that we're missing, but, some sort of ILA with Public Works at the county for coordination and communication from the toll booth at the entrance point to the city at the Venetian Causeway, so that they can communicate to us what they see. During certain peak hours, identify permanent police presence at our entry points throughout the city. And item number three would be to collaborate or to urge the Coast Guard to work with our police department in when possible, opening up the bridge to be able to stop these bicycle gangs and bicycle groups as they're making their way into the city. Are we good with these three takeaways from this item? All right, does this need to go back to commission for ratification?
Yes, if the administration is willing to put police at every entry point, but I believe what he said was that they would need funding to do that. And so that, of course, needs to go back to the commission. Approaching the Venetian Causeway for help with the operator there, I believe they could do on their own if they're willing to do it. And collaborating with the Coast Guard to open the bridge, I think would take a resolution of the
All right.
city commission.
So I think we should we should put an urging on the agenda for the city commission on the Coast Guard coordination. I would like to put an urging on the agenda that of course, I'd like to speak with the chief about it, but about our entry points. I would like for us to work on an urging to put back on the agenda based on this conversation. And then I don't know if you need direction, but I do think it's good to formalize. I think a lot of times we can get our elected officials, for example, we need to take action with the toll office. We can work with the commissioner of the district at the county who's in charge of that area to assist us with it. So I think we should bring these back as action items to the commission. All right? Okay, second by the chair. We can show, and seeing any members of the public wishing to speak, seeing none in person, none on Zoom, we can show this item as adopted by acclamation. All right. Thank you, colleagues. And we can show this item closed?
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. Before we go to item number 3, I'm just going to take addendum number 1 out of order. Stephanie?
Addendum number 1 is discuss the Green Jefferson Avenue bicycle lanes with the Transportation and Mobility Department of Miami Beach Fire Rescue. This item was sponsored by Commissioner Fernandez.
Commissioner Dominguez, addendum number 1.
Oh, this one, okay.
The one about the Venetian,
Yes, it's,
addendum 2. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Let's just have Stephanie read it into the record.
Okay. Addendum number 2 is discuss take action regarding the renaming of Venetian Way to honor Hazel Abrams Sipin pursuant to City Code Section 82-503. This item was sponsored by Commissioner Dominguez.
I'm happy to second your motion. I think it's a no-brainer.
Thank you. I'd like to move the item.
Second. Any members of the public wishing to speak on this item, seeing none in person, none in Zoom, can we adopt this by acclamation? All right. With that, let's call item number 3.
Item number 3 is discuss the potential implementation of.
I'm sorry, no, item number 5 and 6.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Item number 5 is discuss the potential creation of a safe and strategically located bicycle and other micromobility devices parking sites in South Beach. And item number 6 is discuss the potential extension of the 6-month pilot program for bicycle and micromobility devices storage at large-scale events on public property.
Thank you, Stephanie. So this is an item that I want to take together, 5 and 6, because it relates to micromobility and where and how these devices are parked in our public spaces and in our events. One item focuses on expanding bicycle and micromobility parking in South Beach, while the other item looks at storage requirements for large-scale events. But again, it is the same theme of encouraging people to use their bicycle and micromobility devices and providing for them a place where to put them. From reading the memo, we've done meaningful progress over the years, but it seems like our approach is rather reactive rather than proactive. And at the same time, the pilot program that we did for events for storage of micromobility devices at events showed very little usage of that temporary storage, which kind of indicates to me that the issue is not the demand, because there are people using bicycles. It's just that the policies haven't been designed properly. That we need to go back and look at these policies and making clear making clear that the structure that we want for parking of bicycles, whether it's holistically throughout the city, or whether it be when we have events like Scope or Untitled or Art Basel or the Boat Show or any of these other events, that we have a holistic plan to accommodate this. So with that, I want to recognize Jose Gonzalez to lead us in this conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, commissioners or committee members. Jose Gonzalez, Transportation and Mobility Director. So I'll speak to the portion of the item number 5, bicycle parking. And I'll focus on just the day-to-day demands and opportunities for not just bicycle parking, but micro-mobility parking as well. So the first really comprehensive effort to expand bicycle parking in our city came about as a result of the 2016 Transportation and Bicycle Master Plan. That was really the first effort. At that point, we took a look at the city. We surveyed where every bicycle rack was located, and the master plan identified areas for opportunities for expanded bicycle parking. Since then, so this is 10 years ago, since then, there have been over 1,000 bicycle racks installed throughout the city. We currently have over 1,000. The city's standard bicycle parking device is the standard U-Rack. Now it looks like this. And it could be used by micromobility devices as well. So that was really the first concerted effort. Since that time, Commissioner, and you are correct, it's been more a demand-based, needs-based. Wouldn't necessarily call it reactionary, but it's based on, for example, if a business opens up and they call and they say, you know, I'd like a couple bike racks in front of my establishment, then we'll go and we'll install those. So that's been the approach for the past few years. We've also focused on long-term bicycle parking, because bicycle racks are more for the, you know, you're gonna go to a coffee shop, you're gonna go to a store for a little while, and you want to park your bike close and you know, in a convenient way. But some folks commute to works. We commute to work via bicycle, and they need to store their bicycle for several hours, 8 hours, for example. So we've established vertical parking facilities in 7 parking garages throughout the city with wayfinding signs pointing people to where the vertical parking facility is. And so that allows bicyclists to store their bicycles or micromobility devices for longer periods of time.
Let me ask you something. Do we, I know with cars, for example, using cell phone technology and Google Maps and all that, we're able to track, you know, our areas of highest traffic, where people start, where people end. I would imagine if I'm using a bicycle, I know when I go out for a walk and I want to walk somewhere, especially if I'm a tourist or even here, I'll put on my Google Maps. You know, how do I get from point A to point B, the best way to get there walking, or even just to time myself. I would imagine a person on a bicycle is probably doing the same thing, especially if they're not from the area. Do we have a heat map? Can we use that technology? Is there a way to get a heat map of where micro-mobility demand, bicycle demand exists in our city, specifically in South Beach?
So that's a very interesting question. I would say yes, I believe the technology is there because a lot of the technology that's used to detect trips, origin and destinations is based on cell phone data. There are also, some vehicles now that are bringing that technology built in, but how it started was just basically pinging your cell phone, your IP address on your cell phone. So if a person on their bicycle or micromobility device is using a cell phone, the trick is going to be, can we differentiate? How do we know that they're in a vehicle versus a bicycle versus a scooter? Let me get back to you on that one, Commissioner. I think that's a very interesting question.
Because what I think, the challenge is what you mentioned. The challenge is that we do have a fragmented system. We have a fragmented system, whereas it is individuals who are calling, who are asking for bicycle racks, and then we're coming in to put the bicycle rack. Whereas it should be number one, I believe, and I might be wrong. Number one, we should be putting into Google Maps. For example, in preparation for this item, I went into Google Maps and I got me to, I think I put Smith and Walensky in South Point Park from my house on a bicycle. It shows me the route, but it doesn't tell me where I can store my bicycle. It doesn't tell me where you have placed one of these U-racks. And so I got to Smith and Walensky, and then what do I do? I'm not going to go into Smith and Walensky with my bicycle. I'm certainly not going to just leave it out there. I'm not going to put it, and I'm going to, lock it to a pole because you're not allowed to do that. So I think, we need to see the heat map of where is the consumption? Where are people using bicycles, in this, throughout our city, frankly, not just South Beach, but I think South Beach is a good case model because I think there we probably do see the higher use. Then number two, how do we make it easier for people with the infrastructure that we have today? Can we work with Apple Maps, with Google Maps? I saw online there was another there's another website. There's another website that tells you locations of bicycle racks, and it's populated by the users. Maybe we can collaborate with them as well, so that when people go to use these maps to get from point A to point B, it tells them, okay, this is the nearby storage locations. I think that that's very important. But also, seeing throughout our city, I think there should be a certain level of predictability. There should be a certain level of predictability that if you're going to a commercial corridor, the same way that you're going to have a freight loading zone. We have the antiquated taxi stands that we still have a few around this city. There should be a certain master plan that creates a certain level of predictability that if you're going to Whole Foods, I don't need to be guessing, well, is there going to be a bicycle rack or not if I decide to go to Whole Foods on my bicycle. I just know that based on the way that we plan it, I should be able to expect that probably within a block or half a block of Whole Foods, it should be easy for me to be able to locate a bicycle rack. Is that something that we have done some sort of master planning like that?
Commissioner, we have not, but the timing is perfect because, as you may know, we're in the process of updating that 10-year-old master plan from 2016. So, and it will incorporate, it will be a unified master plan that will incorporate all modes, including bicycle. So we'll make sure, since technology has, really gone a long way in the past 10 years, to see how we can incorporate and integrate not just the bicycle routes, but as you're mentioning, the bicycle parking as part of a mobile app. We have a mobile app that integrates our trolley service, our freebie service. We're in the process of having the water taxi show as well. So the modes are there. We could add bicycle. And
But this
then
is in a separate app?
This is the, well, no, it's Google. If I'm not, it's through Google. We're
Google.
entering into an
It's on
agreement
Google,
with
yeah.
them for this.
Because that's the key
as
thing. We need to meet people where they're at. We can't be sending people to, numerous different apps. We need
Yes.
to, as much as we can centralize and meet people. If people are using Apple Maps, well, then I want to make sure that in Apple Maps, it shows them, where the bicycle parking is at. If they're using Google Maps, I want then Google Maps to show them. In fact, we need to be working with rideshare because, we do know that micromobility and bicycles is that last mile that closes that gap when individuals want to use rideshare. And so even to that extent, Uber, Lyft, and the rideshare platforms. So I'd like us to look at integrating that so that we have something holistic. We have something that is driven by the current patterns, and that's why we need those heat maps. But we need to create predictability so that the person who is familiar with the neighborhood that is not going to use a map to go out there, they can count that with some sort of reliability that, okay, I know how to get there, but I don't know where to park. Well, no, that should be easy because the same way we have parallel parking and parking garages within a certain area, we should also make it somewhat predictable that wherever we have on-street parking, somewhere close, in any block that has on-street parking within a certain proximity should have public parking, public bicycle racks, I believe, available to them. Colleagues, I'm open to your feedback, comments. And I don't know if Commissioner Magazine is on Zoom. This is his item. I want to thank him for placing this item because I do think that this is a type of item that helps ensure, that not only are we encouraging people to use micromobility, but that they do it safely and that their devices are kept safe. Yes, Commissioner Salinas.
I'm just looking at the image that was provided to us in the packet, and is this the only? What else? I just feel like it's. Listen, I support having public parking for bikes. I 100% support it in the right areas, and I like how this is not taking up a parking spot, but I don't know if this is the right thing. I worry that, well, number one, it's ugly, but whatever. I mean, and I just worry that it's going to sit there empty and unused. So
This is too big.
yeah, so maybe it's something about half the size, and then that way it can still handle. I just don't think we're going to have the volume to fill this up, and then it just becomes an obstruction, an unsightly obstruction. So I'm assuming there's better things that we could.
Agree. Just to give a little background on this, so what you're referring to, Commissioner, is the bicycle corral that was installed at Drexel and 14th, right there in front of
the school.
Feinberg Fisher. At the request of Feinberg Fisher, there was actually a very similar item a few years ago at the Quality Education Committee that led to a motion, which then led to a commission resolution to focus on bicycle parking immediately around all our schools.
Wonderful.
And so we worked with each school independently, with the principal of each school. And the reason that is there is because I would venture to say the city the school specifically requested it. Yes, in this picture, obviously there are no bicycle racks there. I'm not sure if school was in session or not.
No, I took the picture once we installed the bike.
Sure. And listen, I support, this is a great location where it will be used in front of the schools, but elsewhere in our city, I worry that we won't have the capacity to fill this, and then it'll just kind of be a clunky structure, metal structure.
We only have 3 of these, so we only have.
And they're
3
all
throughout the
around
entire
schools?
city.
No. And the second one on Pura Vida on Washington and Frost, always packed. And the third one in Loomis Park, where the Muscle Beach, so it's always packed.
But that's where I believe that the technology and the heat maps from user data can help drive where these bicycle storage infrastructures can be placed. And in fact, let me ask you something, because, one of my biggest frustrations, and you all have heard me express it, is the amount of parking that we lose when we redesign roads in order to comply with the new FDOT standards. And we end up losing parking, and then you end up with striped areas. And it's understood that you have those striped areas because, of course, a vehicle, an SUV, a truck parked there could very well block the what's it called? The line of sight. Line of sight. It takes an engineer. The line of sight of vehicles. Apparently now line of sight is more sensitive than what it was 40 years ago, but so now we have less parking because of it. But couldn't we go to those yellow striped areas, and rather than losing completely their public utility, couldn't we use them for something that is low scale? I mean, a bicycle is not a car. A bicycle, you can see through bicycles. Bicycles are not tall. Micromobility scooters, like the ones that Commissioner Suarez uses, they're not bulky. So you can still see through them, and they shouldn't impair someone's line of sight. Couldn't we look at some of these striped areas that we have lost as parking to repurpose them for micromobility parking?
We could, Commissioner, and those areas that you're referring, some are required for line of sight. Others are just little, what we call dead zones, areas that are not big enough to do anything meaningful in them. And in some of those dead zones, these that I'm referring to, we have sometimes installed, bicycle racks and or scooter parking. Parking will install scooter parking. If it's a line of sight issue, if it's a safety line of sight issue, it's a little more sensitive, but we can take a look to see if there's any wiggle room. There are limitations in terms of the height that something could be, how bulky it could be. Sometimes if you have too many, even conceivably you can have bicycles in a row that can create almost like a fence-like
But that's where,
obstruction.
but that's where, to Commissioner Matos-Salinas' point, if you don't use a corral, but if you use more of the subtle infrastructure, that isn't as visually imposing, might it be able to fit, I don't know, 20 or 30 bikes the way that this can? No. But might it be able to fit 4 or 5 or 6? Maybe. Well, that's 4 or 5 or 6 cars now off the road, and those are 4 or 5, 6 people that now you've offered them the predictability and the convenience of giving them the infrastructure to encourage them to continue using micromobility the way that we want to get to. And that's what it takes to change culture. Sometimes we want to rush and create the bicycle lanes without providing the infrastructure for people to park their bicycles so that we can start changing the culture. And sometimes it's like putting the egg ahead of the chicken. You gotta foster the behavior and encourage the behavior before we go ahead and redesign all of our roads to accommodate it. So I'd like for you guys to look at that as part of this, Commissioner Suarez.
Commissioner Fernandez, I mean, that's a great idea because it also does something unintended, well, that you may not have thought of, but if we put a bicycle rack in those sort of striped zones, then we don't see, you're not going to have an Amazon truck parked there because they physically can't. And I see that all the time. Even with the new updated parking rules, they since that area is free, you know what, we're just going to park there because that's where we're going to park the box truck. And then it defeats the purpose of having that line of sight. And that happened to me the other day. I was actually riding around Flamingo Park, and there was this huge FedEx truck, and I almost, got hit by a car because they couldn't see around the corner. So, having literally a physical barrier there where these box trucks can't park, I think would be a great idea.
And what ends up happening is that now the residents lost a permanent parking space, but, good luck towing FedEx, It's not easy, or good luck, towing a Cisco truck.
Yeah, actually, Cisco.
It's not going to happen.
Believe it or not, I was on Ocean Drive this week, and I actually took a picture of it because I wanted to bring it to the commission of a parking enforcement taking a picture and citing a Cisco truck, literally on Ocean Drive, on this striped path, and they didn't want to move it. And they said, look, we're just going to take the ticket. And I actually took a picture of our parking attendant taking a picture of the license plate and doing his job, which is what we discussed at the last commission meeting. But if there is a physical barrier there, they're not going to do that. It's just impossible. So I think that's a really good idea, Commissioner.
Understood. We could take a
Commissioner Bond.
look at that.
In other countries that are more advanced than we are in micromobility, they have garages, entire garages that are dedicated specifically to bicycles, and we're not there yet. But they are well lit, they're safe, they are secured with security guards, they are so clean you could eat off the floors. They have artwork installed. We're not even close to that. However, we do have garages, structures all over the city. And I would like you to work with Will McDonald from the Parking Department to install bike corrals into the first floor so they don't have to negotiate with ramps that are already hair-raising on the best day, even if you're in a car, to park for free in our garages. Because sure, it's lovely to be able to cycle up to the door of the store that you're going into, but it's also pretty nice to be able to park your bike in a centrally located garage and then continue on foot. So no time limit. I mean, obviously, we don't want people parking their bikes there for days, but it's not something you have to pay for per hour. It's out of the rain, it's easy to access, and there's a lot more room. On first floors, typically you have, gators of various sorts or other types of utility vehicles. I'm quite sure that we can find a way, certainly in our municipal lots, to start there and then work with private lots to see if we can have them extend that courtesy as well.
And I gotta tell you, that is such a great idea, because it's the way that we should be functioning to create that predictability.
Yep.
If you know that the garage at, I don't know, which is the one that we have on Collins Avenue, the G3.
Collins,
If you know that the Collins Park Garage, for example,
Right.
let's say Collins Park Garage has corral parking, I'll be more likely to take my bicycle to the Collins Park Garage, to go to the Bass Museum, to go to, I don't know, to go to Blue Ribbon Sushi, to go wherever, because I know where to leave my bicycle. The problem is that I'm not gonna go use my bicycle to go have lunch or dinner or to go to the picnic at the Bass on Saturday at 4 p.m., which I missed, unless I know that I can leave my bicycle somewhere. Actually, PJ, I just sent you an image. If you can display that image and zoom in there, let's zoom in on that image a little bit. Okay, this is the parking garage on 17th Street. Okay, so right here across from City Hall, this parking garage where the New World Center is at, it tells you that it's a Miami Beach parking garage. It tells you that you have a Blink charging station. It tells you all of that there. You know what it doesn't tell you? It doesn't tell you whether you can park your bicycle there or not.
and you can.
But you see, that is the irony of it all. That right there on the northeast corner of that garage, okay, we have a huge two-level corral. A huge two-level corral, but people do not know that they can use that corral. But they know, if they go look for a charging station, they know they can take their car there to get charged, and they know they can park their vehicle there. But what we're not telling them is that they have the alternative of being able to park their bicycle there, and that's where we really need to integrate with Google Maps, Apple Maps, Uber, and Lyft, and all of these other platforms to make sure that we're not just providing the infrastructure. We're letting people know we're meeting the consumer where they're at, which is in these platforms, to tell them, hey, listen, you have this convenience that we've placed there. So to bring this in for a landing, I don't want to delve into this much much more. You know, as the outcome of this item, I like to send this back to commission with the following recommendations. Looking at the striped areas that we have lost from parking and repurposing them as parking for bicycles. Creating predictability by master planning bicycle parking throughout our city so that people know every block you're going to find one of these U-racks, so that they know every garage you're going to have this. Sourcing heat maps from Google Maps and other applications to determine where is the use, where is the consumer using bicycles, where are they starting at, where are they going to. And lastly, integrating with the technology to be able to tell people, okay, now that we've provided you with the infrastructure, let us tell you the same way that we tell you where the Blink is at, the Blink charging station, the same way we tell you where you can park your car. We're going to tell you in these maps that you're already using where you can park your bicycle. Yes, Commissioner Matos Salinas.
I just have one last comment that I'm going to make, because I think it's important to note that the metal structure that's in the item, do people lock up and store e-bikes at that structure? Or is that not a thing? Because I don't own an e-bike, and so I don't know how those get locked up.
Pretty much on everything that we have, you can lock e-bike. It's the same bicycle, just with a battery.
And do people do that, or do they have other means of locking an e-bike?
Some do, but I see them less because they're more worried that it's going to be stolen.
Okay. Only because someone pointed out to me recently that regular bicycles are people are using them less because they purchase something that can go both from e-bike to non-e-bike. So if we are, building out these bike parking stations, I think it's important to keep in mind that traditional bicycles will be used less and less as the future moves on and people want to get a hybrid mode of transportation. And so what makes sense for 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Will bicycles even exist, really? Or will everything be an e-bike that you can go from two different modes? I don't know. Thank you.
All right. So with that, with this item, we have these 4 recommendations that I think we could send back to commission as action items. Perhaps as action items sponsored by this committee, because unless we have any concerns to Commissioner Dominguez, you have any thoughts on these? You're good?
No, I'm good. The thoughts I had were similar to the vice mayor, where if it's not utilized, we'd have a huge structure with not a lot of bikes.
All right. So with that, can we send these 4 recommendations back to commission by acclamation? All right. So with that, and this takes us right into item number 6, which is the same issue of predictability. We need to create the predictability when we're having these large-scale events that the public knows, whether you be a tourist or a resident, that we've made it convenient for you to get to your event using micromobility. Now, during the pilot period, what occurred, I guess there was not high usage. If you could guide us through this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Francis Weiss, U.S. Assistant Director of Tourism and Culture. And I absolutely agree that it goes hand in hand with the previous item. The pilot program went into effect in June of last year up until December, and it was meant for large-scale events, which typically have more than 5,000 attendees. It was meant to have free parking on the footprint of events. And so what the program included was waivers of fees so that these events can add space. The feedback that we got so far was that, like you mentioned, there was not a lot of utilization of the spaces. It was not too uniform between the different events. They were mostly in the spoil area. There was mention of concerns of liability by the events because they have to accept the devices. We did not make a distinction, now that we hear all this conversation, between traditional bicycles and e-bikes. E-bikes were meant to be included, and we even reviewed it with the fire department for storage, what the event would need to do. But as you mentioned, there was not a lot of utilization.
Let me ask you this: did tourism and cultural development collaborate with our transportation department to create a framework, a policy that could be shared with the events? As to, here we are, we're telling events, okay, we want you to provide these bicycle and micromobility device storage in your events, but this is how you do it, like giving them the vision for it.
No, in terms of more structure specifically with the transportation department, no, we focused more on safety and liability issues regarding the event. We did consult with the Production Industry Council multiple times, from before the resolution passed to after, to get feedback from event producers. And in general, I think the idea that they were mostly sharing, they were hoping that would come of this, was more permanent structures. So hearing the conversation today, I think it leads to an opportunity of that, because it would be more of permanent structures along with more communication, because events typically will say, if you're coming to our event, these are the parking garages that you can use. I think it goes hand in hand, if we do have more physical structures, that the events could do that.
So I like for us to coordinate, perhaps tourism and cultural development can sit down and work with our transportation department on a policy. On a policy, because it might be depending where the event is at. If the event is right next to where you have a large bicycle facility, well, if the public is already providing it, if the city is already providing it, we shouldn't be putting the event through the, hoops and hurdles of having to recreate the wheel. But there's times that you don't have anything close by. Like, for example, on the beach, you have events that take place on the beach, and I'll use Scope and Untitled as an example. People who take their bicycle, they don't want to have to park at a garage, their bicycle, and then walk over. No, they want to be able to leave their bicycle as close as they can to where they're at. And I think we need to create that framework, that greater direction of what does that look like? What does that look like? How big are these spaces? Are they manned? Are they not manned? And so I would love for you guys to work together on a policy, bring something back to the committee that we can review, that we can vet, so that we give these event organizers clear guidance on what this is. And it's also not just providing it, but making sure that people know that it exists. And so just how I'm mentioning with our other bicycle infrastructure, looking at the heat maps and putting it on Google Maps and Apple Maps where these are located. Well, with special events, making sure that in their parking plans, or when they're telling people where to park, that they also include in there, if you're riding on a bicycle, this is where you can park. It makes me think of when we did it with Art Basel. That we had, I think it was with Art Basel, at one point we had a bicycle ballet for Art Basel. Was that the event?
I can't speak to that. Do you have any information on that?
Yes, a few years ago, it
Yes.
was a pilot. I recall that it was not very effective. It was not used. There was a fee associated with parking.
There you go, the fee. Well, and that's part of the thing. Number one, you need to promote it. Number two, it needs to be conveniently located. But number three, you can't have a fee. So let's work on a strategy, on a strategy of the guidelines for the events of how to do this, and the requirements for them to staff it, and to get the word out about it. The other thing I would say is I got complaints from people that rode their bicycle to Faina. They had the beautiful exhibit on the sand. They wanted to park their bicycles. Faina didn't provide the storage facility. And then when asked, well, Faina said, well, they didn't meet the threshold. The threshold that we had was 5,000. How do they not? I mean, that Faina exhibit attracts thousands of people. And so maybe we need to go back, look at how the structure is, how the threshold is structured. Maybe we need to lower the threshold to, a daily number of attendees, or 5,000 in the aggregate of the total event. Because when you look at Faina, that had to have had attracted more than 5,000 people over the period of the installation. So let's take a look at that as well. The threshold that triggers the requirement to provide for this bicycle storage facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think that's a great opportunity, and working with the transportation department, as you mentioned, there may be areas that already have spaces that events can take advantage of.
Okay, very good. Colleagues, any comments on this?
I will just say that, the water taxi worked incredibly well, and that was sort of an unproven undertaking. And I think part of it was that it was super well communicated and that it was free. And so I think the same has to apply here, that it's, it's a convenience factor. God knows traffic is disastrous during that week. And so the more we can do to take cars off the road and to make it easier. And I like the idea of the threshold being an aggregate, not per day. Because, it's a minor blip for the organizer. It's a big impact for residents and visitors.
Yeah. And if we need to reduce, frankly, I mean, any of these large events that are getting a special event permit, we've required special event permits for a lot of things. But we know, Faina having a special event like that, we know that this is what we have in mind. Even if they say they're not going to have the 5,000 people, it's clear, it's events like these that draw the attraction that we want to create this convenience for.
Understood.
Yes. Thank you so much. If there's no other comments from my colleagues, any comments from the public, seeing none in person and none in Zoom, we will continue this item so that we can get feedback from the administration. All right. With that, let's go to item number 3.
Item number 3 is discuss the potential implementation of a bicycle lane on the west side of Collins Avenue as part of an upcoming Florida Department Transportation resurfacing, restoration, and rehabilitation project on State Road A1A Collins Avenue from State Road 907, 63rd Street to 75th Street. This item was sponsored by Commissioner Fernandez. Transportation will be presenting.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. So this item is exactly, the challenge that we're facing. How do you balance, the safety of the bicyclists with mobility, availability, and the economic vitality of businesses that could potentially suffer if you take away parking? So, I think we all support the expansion of our bicycle network done the right way, in a very balanced way. And so we need to find how do we do that responsibly to implement it in the most thoughtful way possible that provides for connectivity without unintentionally harming the very businesses like in this area in North Beach that really make North Beach so vibrant and so special. And so right now, the FDOT project, Jose, correct me if I'm wrong, we explored the feasibility of doing this through the FDOT project, but that doesn't work. Is that correct?
That's correct. The DOT project is constrained in terms of scope and budget. It's simply a resurfacing, more of a resurfacing project, not a reconstruction project. So to incorporate a bicycle lane on Collins Avenue from 63rd to 75th would require a redesign of Collins Avenue, redesigning the sidewalks, the travel lanes to incorporate a bike lane. And, you know, as such, FDOT said that they would work with us to program a future project that would include the bike lanes. And if you recall, the commission took action on this item and passed a resolution endorsing the FDOT resurfacing project to move forward without, as designed, without the bicycle lane, because the bicycle lane, by the way, would have also eliminated 75
parking
on-street
spaces.
parking spaces.
Right.
It was just too impactful.
So I believe at the time, we had given direction for there to be let's see here, a community meeting.
Yes.
Be hosted jointly by the city and FDOT on option number 2. If you could walk us through what option number 2 was and what feedback we got from the residents.
Sure. Well, Commissioner, the community meeting has not occurred yet. We've been working with FDOT. They, I recall that it was scheduled at one point, but had to be postponed because of an unforeseen situation. And so we're in the process of rescheduling that. It would be a hybrid meeting. DOT and city staff would be in person. We wanted to do it at the North Shore Community Center to present, and really FDOT will be presenting what a bike lane on Collins Avenue could potentially look like. It would require narrowing the
Right.
sidewalks a bit.
And that's what makes option 2 different, that rather than taking away the parking spaces, we're now accommodating for the 3 modes. So you're providing bicycle, vehicle parking, and pedestrianism, but taking away from the sidewalk a little
From the
bit.
sidewalks, yeah. So exactly what that would look like, FDOT was actually developing some concept drawings to show at the community meeting. We can follow up once we have a date for that community meeting, but it has not been
But we
scheduled yet.
discussed this, I believe, at our February 2025 Public Safety Committee meeting.
Yeah.
It's been over a year now. We haven't had this meeting with FDOT.
Well, we have met with FDOT.
But the public
FDOT's
community
been
meeting.
developing the concept drawings. What they wanted to show, if I recall correctly, was a roll plot, you know, and they wanted to lay it out on a long table as to what the corridor would look like. And so that does take time for them to develop those concept drawings. And, but we'll make sure to try to expedite this and have this. meeting in the
And I'll
next
tell you
month.
why we do need to expedite this, because option 2 is something that would have to be incorporated as part of a future reconstruction project of Collins Avenue.
Yes.
Because it involves changes to the curb, to the gutter, to the built environment of the sidewalks. And to the extent that we would do a future project out of this, we would have to incorporate this into our funding. We would have to identify, do any FDOT grants exist? Does the TPO have any dollars? Are there any other funding sources besides our own at a time when we're also facing potential changes in our revenue sources? And so we need to be having this conversation, because we really can't start. You know, one thing, yes, is the engineer planning of this, them putting together their preliminary designs and their traffic studies and all that, but that's only one component of it. We need to be on a parallel track looking at what makes the world go round and round, which is what makes bicycle wheels go round and round on unsafe infrastructure, which is money and budget to be able to put this into motion. So how long do you anticipate it could potentially take to get this community meeting done?
I would say within a couple months, I think we should be able to do it. We need to coordinate closely with FDOT. They need to be present. So, they would need to be available, and, at least a couple weeks of advance notice to the community. So I think within the next 2 months is realistic.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Jose, if this is an FDOT project, wouldn't FDOT be funding it? Or is
Well-
that just a pipe dream?
That's what we're going to advocate for. However, upon having preliminary discussions with FDOT on this, they were looking at more of a partnership and a joint project where the city would pay a portion and the DOT would pay a portion, because the need for the reconstruction is because of the bicycle lane.
Okay.
Now, so let me ask you this, because, obviously, there's the long-term strategy of reconstructing this built environment in the interim part of this. The state is doing their resurfacing and restoration and rehabilitation project, but what can we do? Are there improvements to the crosswalks that we can make to make conditions better? Is there, added signage? Can we do sharrows do we have, or do we even have sharrows right now alerting drivers to share the road with bicycles? What can we do, in the meantime?
Well, sharrows, as you mentioned, Commissioner, that is a minimum requirement. That is minimum standard.
But do we have that today?
It will be part of the project, yes. The project is actually.
The one that we endorsed?
The resurfacing project.
From 63rd to 75th?
Yes.
Yeah,
That
and
one-
that's the one where we tried initially to incorporate the bicycle lane, but because of the impacts, we weren't able to do it. Because of the 75 parking spaces we were going to lose, we weren't
That's
able to do it because of that.
That's correct.
But as part of this implementation, we're gonna have showers. What is the date of commencement for that project?
Okay, so, summer of this year, and we'll triple check that.
Okay, and, with them placing sharrows, are we going to have to plan for any signage, or does FDOT come in and provide the signage?
They will provide it.
Okay.
It's part
And
of
how
the
about,
project.
the moment that we have that sharrow there in the short term, and hopefully eventually someday we'll have a true bicycle infrastructure, from 63rd to 75th, what are we starting to think about the east-west connectors, 72nd Street, 73rd Street, 71st Street? What are we doing in terms of planning to start to get ahead of
Sure,
that?
so very good question. So 72nd Street has bicycle lanes already.
Okay.
73rd Street, we're on the verge of implementing the bicycle lane along 73rd. Probably within summer as well, we're thinking. The project has been fully designed. We're just going through the procurement of a contractor. And that will be a green bicycle lane on 73rd. So that's two east-west streets right there that will provide some connectivity. North Beach is very challenging, very difficult, because it's just very challenging to eliminate on-street parking in order to accommodate a bicycle lane. And the streets are such that, they're not very, some are not very wide. So there may be opportunities for one-waying some streets, for example, and gaining some area, but that will require more of a master planning effort. So our updated transportation master plan that I referred to before will be looking at North Beach, at the grid there, and seeing ways of accommodating some bicycle facilities in that area.
I love that because it just ties into, I guess, the point that I want to finish this conversation with. We often hear about the responsibilities of the state. We often hear about the responsibilities of the county, but what exactly falls under our jurisdiction, under our control, under our purview as a city? And so, for our next meeting, and I don't want to do the next meeting, this item, maybe we can bring this up in 3 or 4 months, because I want to give you time to schedule the community meeting. And I would like to get an update the next time we have this conversation about that community meeting. But I'd also like to get a comprehensive list from the administration that, gives us an itemization a complete list of the creative solutions, of the innovative ideas that we can pursue as a city to enhance our long-term goal, but, in these earlier phases before we get there. We know that potentially, even when we're talking about option two, very superficially, without any designs, we know that that could potentially be up to $9 million that we haven't budgeted, but we don't know what the real numbers are because we haven't seen a design. So in the meantime, by the time we go through the community vetting and by the time we go through the design and the funding process and all that, it takes years. So, these short-term wins that we can jointly achieve, I think would be great to have them itemized out at our next conversation on this item, which I think 4 months, does that give you sufficient time to have a community
That
meeting
gives
and
us
bring it
ample
back?
time, yes, yes.
Okay.
And Commissioner, to your point, just want to mention, we had or Commissioner Bott sponsored a town hall meeting on micromobility several months ago. And at that meeting, we talked about some low-hanging fruits and, interim improvements, even if it's just signage, on the pavement.
Oh, they're great.
The green box. They may not be dedicated lanes for bicyclists, but they raise awareness. And they improve safety.
It's great because the work that you're doing, Commissioner Bott, how it's being implemented by the administration throughout the city is so important because we have so many tourists that come here from so many different parts of the world. Even the conversation that we started off today, we gonna allow motorized e-bikes in parks or not? Miami Beach may have one culture, another city somewhere in the United States may have a different culture, and in Europe they may have a completely different culture. But educating people and even, simple signage, you're leaving the beach and you're telling people to look. A lot of people don't realize that our shared use path, our beach walk, high use of bicycles. And it's common sense, but sometimes common sense is not that common. You do have to remind people to look or to stay right. So it's been a great implementation because just with the diversity of cultures that we have coming in and out of our city, it's good to give people that very simple and basic guidance.
Well, thank you for that, and I will also add to that, if I may, that last year I spoke with colleagues in this field from Paris who have been instrumental in totally prioritizing bicycles and micromobility in that city, and they use COVID and the Olympics as an opportunity to really change the infrastructure, and other colleagues from the Netherlands and Denmark, which also obviously have super strong bike cultures, and they all raved about Miami Beach and the beach walk and other initiatives, which I thought was sort of amusing because to us we're frustrated that it's not good enough and not as good as we want it to be. And they think it's one of the best cities to ride in the country, and hold it up as a shining example. I'm like, oh, okay, well, we need to do better. But it is, it's good to come out of our little bubble and see how it stacks up against other places. So.
Yeah.
It's not where we want it to be, but it is a lot better than it could be, and we're working together for the most part to get it there.
Yeah, we're so privileged because we do get accustomed to paradise. We become desensitized to it. This really is paradise. People from all over the world, when they come and visit, it's things that we just have gotten used to and accustomed to, and it's our minimum and bare expectation for them is the greatest amenity, the greatest finished product compared to what they have at home. And sometimes home might be just across the bridge here in Miami-Dade County, or sometimes home might be on the other side of the world where we think when we go over there that it's so amazing. But, here we have a beautiful paradise. To your point, we oftentimes take it for granted. And sometimes that is the beautiful thing of being a destination, that we have these visitors that come here and that remind us of how beautiful this great community that we live in is. So, Jose, thank you for this. Let's bring this item back in 4 months. The feedback from the community meeting, from FDOT, and a full list of the itemization of what we can do as short-term wins as it relates to this in this corridor. Okay, colleagues, we're gonna take next items 7, 8, 9, and 10. But what I would like us to do, can we take just a 5-minute break just to use the restroom, get some coffee, because we've been going at it since 9 a.m. Cuban time, because I did get here a little bit late. Let's take a 5-minute break, and we can come back to take these.
Please stand by. We are going on air in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We took a recess, the Public Safety, Neighborhood, and Quality of Life Committee. We're actually going to start off with item number 12, but before we do that, I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege and recognize Sarah from Commissioner Bott's office, who would be remiss to let the day go by without highlighting the fact that yesterday it was the birthday of our dear colleague, Commissioner Tanya Bott. And so she's gonna lead us. Why don't you lead off in the singing, Sarah?
All
right.
We're gonna do it in English and then we'll do it in Spanish.
Okay, there you go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Commissioner Bott. Happy birthday to you. All right, and to many more, and to many more. Happy birthday, Commissioner. I know, right? Yeah, you gotta share those brownies with everyone. And Commissioner, since it's your birthday, we're gonna grant you your birthday wish of having item number 13, it was, it's 12, item number 12, called first.
Yes, thank you. And I wanted to do this because the gentlemen who are here to present on it are the only folks who are here who are not actually city staff. So I don't want to have them sit through the entirety of the meeting. So a hot topic for a lot of us is affordable housing and ways to do it without destroying the buildings that we love and care about in our city, and without having other people from without our city coming in and forcing their views on us. And so Jason Balsario and his business partner are here to talk about their vision on how to help us do that in an organic way. And with that, I will turn it over to Stephen Anthony from the Economic Development Department, and to Jason. And I will remind everybody that this has already been vetted by the, if I remember correctly, the CRA wanted to start off with a $200,000 pilot program, and we decided we're going to start off a little smaller just to work the kinks out. And I know that Jason and team have been working with other folks throughout the city to, in other fields, banking and development and affordable housing, to fine-tune this program. And I'm extremely excited to get this off the ground and start proving the concept. So with that, I'll defer to you fine gentlemen.
No, thank you, Commissioner. And good morning. It's still morning. Good morning, committee members, chair, certainly Stephen Anthony, Economic Development Director. And so excited about the opportunity that's in front of us with the NOAA program. There's a number of different NOAA programs throughout the country. So what I want, and you will certainly see varying levels of success with natural occurring affordable housing programs throughout the country. But one of the things that's specific and that's unique about what's being presented here today is that there's a different way in terms of, and typically what you will see with these types of programs is that usually there's some type of reimbursable grant program that's basically saying, hey, landlord, you come over here, we'll give you a grant. In exchange for that grant to redevelop the property, you'll place some type of covenant on that property that keeps it mitigated at a certain price level for a certain number of years. And so that's what you've seen across the country with varying levels of success and certain engagement from landlords in their participation in those types of programs. But one of the things that's unique with this program, and certainly Jason and Cornucopian will give some further details, is that there's an opportunity to look at how do we collaborate across respective partners. So how do we collaborate with landlords?
Sorry to cut you off. I think the item on the screen is wrong. There we go.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. So how do we collaborate against respective partners and banks and landlords to create a program that's a little bit more succinct, and that's also, it helps with the city's, any type of city participation, in this particular case with the North Beach CRA, and the participation that we have and mitigate some of the things in place, some guardrails and guidelines around how certain funds are used. In this particular case, the funds would be used to draw down the interest rate. So it would actually buy down the interest rate for those loans that landlords would get from participating banks. So that would help mitigate their costs. And in exchange for that, of course, the landlords are agreeing to a covenant for a certain number of years. And so with that, I'll certainly pass it to Jason so he can give some further details on their approach to naturally occurring affordable housing.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Good morning, everybody, commissioners, Mr. Chair. Happy birthday, Commissioner Bott. We have a short presentation that I sent, if it could be possible to put it on the screen. So, as mentioned, my name is Jason Belisari. I'm co-founder of a startup called Cornucopian, which exists to address some of today's most challenging issues in housing. I'm also a Miami Beach resident. I live on 21st Street at Artis City. We designed a capital-efficient and scalable program to preserve naturally occurring affordable housing, or NOAH for short, through low-interest, long-term renovation financing that multiplies public dollars by 3 to 5 times. So, once we get the presentation up, the main piece is the problem aspect, which is on slide 2.
PJ, do you guys have the link? They emailed it 5 minutes ago.
One moment. It's less important visually, just for the sake of brevity and time. The key issue is that Miami Beach is losing affordable housing faster than we can build it. Right, so one new construction city-assisted project made it through in the last decade, which was the Anamar. It was 80 units, about $10 million in city subsidy, and it took from 7 years from concept to keys. A sample of just 3 buildings we lost, 700 Euclid, 6881 Indian Creek, and 1619 Lenox Avenue, were enough to erase the gains of the Anamar before they were even counted. 108 units were lost between just these 3 projects in 2021 and 22, putting us at a net change of negative 28 units. I must emphasize that this is a small sample, not a full audit of all the buildings lost over the years to deterioration, abandonment, or conversion to more expensive housing. A tenant at 6881 Indian Creek, this is slide 2. A tenant at 6881 Indian Creek told the news crew that his rent was $800 and he loved living there. In the video, some people had to end up actually going to shelters. That building no longer exists and is being replaced by luxury townhomes. We believe that every aging building hits the same fork in the road. You either renovate and raise rents, or you maintain rents and watch the building deteriorate as expenses creep up, and we're offering door number 3. So for slide 3, how does it work? An owner of a sub-50 unit, unsubsidized apartment building applies through noahloan.com. An independent bank makes that credit decision, and the city buys down the rate from market interest rate to below 3%. A voluntary affordability covenant is recorded for 10 to 20 years, which survives sale. And finally, we verify ongoing compliance throughout the bank term, or throughout the term. It's important to note why a landlord would do this. On the revenue side, they'll pick a rent ceiling as a percentage above their current rents, with room for rent growth within limits, and they'll have more stable tenants, meaning less vacancy, turnover, and leasing costs. On the expense side, you have a long-term, fully amortizing loan at the lowest rate on the market with no balloon payment, meaning no refinance risk. The alternative is shorter-term debt at a higher rate that barely touches the principal. You refinance every time, you sort of like on a 5-7 year term, at nearly the same balance, paying interest on money you never really pay down until you eventually sell to a new owner with new goals for their hold period. The covenants will be the price of the best renovation financing on the market. Next slide, please. The pilot structure, we're looking at $100,000 in rate buydowns from the North Beach CRA, which mobilizes $300,000 to $500,000 in private lending. And our goal is to preserve 10 to 15 units over 12 months in North Beach, working with buildings at or below 120% of AMI. It's a fixed amount, a fixed geography, fixed timeline, and if nobody signs up, the money goes back to the city.
Jason, just to clarify, units, you mean buildings, not individual apartments within a building? Okay.
Apartment buildings, yes.
So it would only apply to a landlord that owns the building?
Correct.
Right.
This is designed for people who plan on owning for the next 10 to 20 years, right? Not fixed and flow, sort of, private equity, real estate private equity, buyers that are going to hold for 3 to 5 years. Next slide, please. Regarding city oversight, city has full visibility into program records, receive quarterly updates, and real-time dashboard access from the program administrator. It's important to note what the city does not have to do, which is to build internal capacity to originate loans, manage contractors, hire extra staff, and build systems and more. The program administrator would run operations, and city holds the administrator accountable. Next slide, please. Regarding risk mitigation, banks underwrite each loan independently. Covenants are recorded as separate standalone instruments and survive sale and foreclosure. Contractors are pre-vetted, scope of work is locked in before closing, and banks only release funds after inspection. Lastly, program funds would be sit in a designated account to be dispersed to the bank upon receipt of affordability covenant and loan closing docs. Next slide, please. We're almost there. This is ready to launch today. This is not a promise. This is, we purpose-built technology for this that's live today. Application intake, deal pipelines, compliance monitoring, audit trails, read-only city dashboard, and much more. They're all operational on noalone.com and admin.noalone.com. Next slide, please. So the penultimate slide, the milestones are pre-launch. We're working on pipeline building and outreach. It's a small pilot, so we're targeting first properties being signed within the first 60 to 90 days. Our quarterly KPIs will be units preserved, dollars deployed, compliance rate, and cost per unit. And on month 12, we will have an assessment of the pilot, and the city would decide whether or not to expand the program. And lastly, the ask here is that the committee recommend the commission to move forward with a 12-month NOAA loan pilot in North Beach. And I want to thank you all for your time listening to my spiel. We know that staff has been instrumental in helping structure this thus far, so we wanted to thank them as well, and we're open for questions.
Commissioner Salinas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Terry? Thank you for being here, and I appreciate the fact that you're a resident, and there's a lot of things that you're going to help us with, and the fact that you're a resident is very helpful because, you see what we're going through in Miami Beach, so I do appreciate that, and I also appreciate that you're an alumni of the affordable housing program through University of Miami, so kudos. Dr. Terry, could you tell me, and I understand, Jason, right?
Yes.
You've been working with our economic development department,
Yep.
but you've also met with Dr. Terry and the.
So we had a meeting in November with Commissioner Bott, Jason Green, and Rick from the City Attorney's Office.
And so just a couple questions. Have you already identified some buildings and reached out to, or are you waiting for the funding to be approved in order to?
So it's kind of twofold, right? So we through our network have reached out to owners. I think more succinctly, we've done owner outreach generally in Miami Beach to speak to owners who own, sort of in totality, hundreds of these units to understand their reality of ownership. With regard to North Beach specifically, we've done research into the area. There's around 156 buildings totaling 2,266 units that are that sort of qualifies. What typically is NOAA, right? Built before 1996, so 30 years or older, sub 50 units, right? So that's how many units exist today in that area, specifically within the North Beach CRA bounds. But yes, we would be, sort of pending a full program to marshal resources for direct outreach.
So you have been reaching out, you have identified buildings, and have they shown interest?
Yeah, I mean, I look in North Beach. I have an owner who has 7 buildings in the area, right? Multiple of which are in the specific CRA boundary. Some literally a street outside, but very very sophisticated owner. Sees a lot of value even on the construction, on the renovation side. He personally needs no help, right? But he sees a lot of value in sort of that infrastructure around managing construction. On Friday, I had lunch with a developer, very prominent one that I can name at a later time, that would even be willing to buy a building in North Beach just for the pilot. So yeah, look, I think the main takeaway on the benefit for the landlords is that the loan structure itself, being very long-term, fully amortizing, when you compare the sort of interest payments over the life of the loan relative to if you go down the treadmill of refinancing every time your 5 years, 7 years comes up, the interest expense is absurd, right? And so you basically do not build equity in your property. So I think the argument here is that yes, there are benefits to your sort of profit and loss statement, but there are like massive benefits to your balance sheet, right?
I just want to make sure, and this is the reason why I'm asking, is because I want to make sure that the $100,000 is going to a property owner and a landlord owner who need it and who, without that 100,000 or without your assistance, because they can't take on some of the roles that you guys are going to help them with, that building is going to end up either being sold at some point because they just can't manage it or they can't afford it, instead of, a developer, although well-meaning, wants to, just kind of use that allocation. So I just, again, want to, caution to make sure we're using the funds appropriately. And then, Dr. Terry, it's naturally occurring affordable housing, so do these people have a current covenant on the building, and do they use caseworkers to monitor the AMI and the residents that live there, or?
Yeah, so NOAA is the most at risk because it is unsubsidized today, right? Rents are.
Okay, and you'll keep it unsubsidized then?
Well, this is introducing a subsidy.
Which is the covenant?
Yeah, which is the rate buy down. The
But
subsidy is the rate buy down and the
Sure.
covenant.
But other than the covenant, then, are you gonna then put, standards on the occupancy
The
that folks
covenant-
need to be a certain AMI?
So.
Or is
we
it
would-
just the covenant?
Just the covenant on the rents of the building itself. I think operationally, once you start to introduce, sort of income restrictions on specific tenants, right, then you introduce an avenue of attack of like fraud, right? You have to vet their sources of income, et cetera, right? And so I think the better thing, and sort of the more straightforward thing, is to vet the rents themselves.
So then how do you put those controls on, I understand, but how do you ensure, are you just going based on market rate and you're asking the landlords to sign a covenant for how many years?
So it's 10 to 20 years, and contrary to typical affordable programs, right, where they say, let's say, I'm going to use 6881 Indian Creek as an example, right? So doesn't exist, right? But at the time when rents were like $800, and I'm going off of the news, right, that is 34% of AMI, right?
Right.
So even if we were to say a program is capped at 80% of AMI, right, technically that guy could go from $800 to $1,800 and be within the limits, right? Here we are anchoring to their current rent, right, and allowing them to set a cushion that helps them and their ownership sort of experience, but also mostly helps the banks, right, feel comfortable underwriting this. But yes, their restriction will be anchored to their current rent, right? Less so on just a overall program ceiling that then just allows them to, because you can say then, yes, it's affordable, but it's like, is it, right? Because, yeah.
Well, right, and that's why I'm asking what type of, restrictions we're gonna have, because I don't want the $100,000 to go to good use, rightfully so, but then the landlord says, well, now this has increased the value, so I'm just gonna increase the rents,
No,
which,
they'd be in default. They'd be in default with the covenant. And then
Okay.
it would trigger acceleration plus like any teeth we put on it.
and it's only 10 years?
10 to 20 years. And the way so we're big on incentives, right? And so basically the way it's sized is that they'll set some boundaries of like 20,000 per unit up to 50,000. The longer term you sign up for, the more money you have access to. And then also, like, depending on how you sort of structure your rent cushion, that affects your interest rate, right? And so there's a direct disincentive to, sort of apply for 10 years at a higher rent, right? You're not really going to get that many benefits out of this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think that this is a great test of whether Miami Beach can preserve affordability in a way that's sustainable, because as you well mentioned, we are already a built-out environment, and relying solely on new housing to solve the affordability issue, it's unrealistic. So unless we find a way to preserve the existing housing, unless we find a way to preserve the naturally occurring affordable housing, if we don't find that, then we should really throw out all of our affordable housing goals, because they're just not, it's not going to be realistic. So obviously the question always becomes, how do we preserve what we already have? So just a few questions, because in a high cost market like ours, where insurance is high, operating costs can be high as well and continue to rise. how are we ensuring that the program actually is attractive to property owners? Because I think that's, you know, the numbers look good. It looks real, it looks substantive. But if your insurance continues to inflate and your operating costs continues to go up, how do we make sure that it's not only good on paper, but it's good realistically for the user?
Yeah, so I want to sort of draw attention to the memo that we shared in that we pose a question to the city attorney's office, right, around the concept of a targeted pass-through, right? We believe that if you do not allow for a pass-through for non-controllable expenses within reason, right, focusing on property taxes and insurance, you're effectively asking a property owner to become a better, on the weather in 10 years, right? And where will insurance rates go? And, they can suffer, quite, in a pretty negative way. Like,
So they'll be able to pass through to the tenants certain increases that they encounter.
Yeah, there are a few caveats there, right? So number one, on property taxes, you must, you must show intent that you appealed your property taxes, you made best efforts, right? And then on the insurance side, you will have to shop rates as well and show that you truly made an effort to show that this increase on insurance is the reality of your situation. And then caveat as well is that we spoke with a landlord in South Beach, right, who owns like 300 of these units, and he made a point that it is, the market won't allow in a lot of ways for you to pass through that cost, right? So there's a natural buffer against it. However, you do need a release valve in a worst case scenario. And generally landlords will not want to test tenant resolve to leave, right? Because turn costs sometimes are a lot higher than just simply passing this cost on, right? You'd rather eat the cost yourself than pass it on, right? Because an empty unit's going to hurt you way worse than any increase in property taxes or insurance. But it is worth noting that without that release valve, this becomes untenable for people. Just they don't want to become a better on where this will go in 10 to 20 years, right?
So, and let me ask you, the rent covenants, they're potentially 10 to 20 years?
Yes, 10 to 20 years. That's the
Okay.
goal.
I'm sorry?
That's the goal, yeah, 10 to 20 years.
10 to 20 years. How are we accounting for, how they need to have certain growth, and now they're going to opt out of the program?
Yeah,
Like,
so-
what's the formula for that?
So the way it would work is, let's say your rents are $1,500, right? Typically, if like I mentioned before, in another sort of program, if you were to just say you're at 80% of AMI, right, and your cap is 120% of AMI, when you frame that sort of for a landlord, then they say, oh, let me set my cap at 90, 100% of AMI. But in reality, that's pretty far off from what the market would allow, right? And so, like I mentioned, let's say your rents are at $1,500 today, right? You want to set a cushion of, let's say, 5%, right, above your current rents. That is your starting ceiling. Then on, you would grow at AMI, right? AMI historically over the past 30 years in Miami-Dade County has grown at like 3% per year, right? So you still have access to rent growth, but it is at a, typically at a lower clip than inflation or what we've seen sort of in the general private markets.
And so, and lastly, since this is a pilot program, what does success look like at the end of the pilot program? How do we measure the effectiveness of it? Is it the number of units preserved? Are we tracking participation rates, financial performance? Like, what does success look like at the end of the pilot?
Success is, to me, speed and leverage, right? If we deploy dollars in weeks, right, instead of months or years, to me that's success. If we showcase that we preserve, for instance, the Anamar as an example, right, it was $125,000 per unit in city subsidy. If we bring a unit online through preservation for a fraction of that, right, and we show that for every dollar that went into this program, we mobilized 3 to 5x private dollars, right, the higher that number is, that to me looks like success as well.
All right.
If I might.
Commissioner Bond and then Commissioner Suarez.
When I was knocking on doors in North Beach, there were what used to be naturally occurring affordable housing units that had been definitely gussied up. And you know, a couple of people I spoke to in some of those units said, you know, I still live here, but most of my neighbors have left because the ownership has changed and they've really increased the rents. And yeah, they've made some upgrades, but now the people who are living here can't live here anymore. So it's not the same kind of naturally occurring affordable housing. And I think the success becomes that the inventory stock is upgraded. So you've got better windows, air conditioning that works reliably, new roofs, you know, safer stairwells, you know, spalling repairs without displacing the residents. And without the owners giving up and selling to development companies who want to either knock them down and build something new completely, or you know, revitalize them so much that they no longer serve the residents who work there. To me, in addition to everything that Jason has said, the sign of success in North Beach is that it works so well that we're able to do this in Flamingo Park as well, where we have such a beautiful collection. You know, North Beach is uneven. We have some amazing, beautiful buildings, and we have some that are not, you know, nothing great, except they're people's homes, so they're wonderful. But in Flamingo Park, we have so many really beautiful buildings that need that kind of help that doesn't require you know, wholesale zoning change to accommodate what we're trying to do. So you know, for my part, I want to see this program tested as soon as possible, so that if there are tweaks that are needed, we can do that in real time and, you know, start using this and ideally become a model for other cities that have the same issues that we do, that are trying to figure out how to provide very much necessary affordable housing without ceding control of their city to big-time developers.
Well, and that's what I appreciate about this proposal, is that it's not asking the city to take on an outsized financial burden. You're getting a very modest, very, very, very modest public investment, and you're leveraging it to unlock the private capital that you need and stabilize existing units. I mean, that, to me, this is such a great win-win. Should it pass, it's just it seems like a sustainable model. When we met, I asked you guys, well, how can we transfer this for naturally occurring individual units, naturally occurring affordable housing in individual units, when you individually own a unit, or you're an individual landlord of an individual unit where you have affordable rents. And I know that, you know, you're getting there. The mechanisms are not all there yet, but that's not to say that the bulk, I think we have a bulk of people who rely on naturally occurring affordable housing that do live in these apartment buildings that are owned by large landlords, and I can think of multiple here in our city. And the great thing about it also, at the end of the day, is that it advances our goals for preservation as well. And that is, you know, the other public benefit here. We got to preserve the architecture of these buildings, that when we know that investment in preservation is not always cheap. And at times it's expensive, and it comes at the loss of the affordability in housing. Commissioner Suarez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, in a nutshell, for those who are watching, the request is to take public funds and to give to multi-unit landlords to do what exactly?
To perform renovations on their buildings, to address the.
Correction. The funds would actually be used, they would be set into a credit enhancement pool. That money would actually go towards the banks to actually draw down the interest rates. The banks would lend the capital out to the respective landlords. So I just wanted to make that clear.
But the public purpose at the end of the day is for housing stability, to set housing at a certain AMI. And that is the public purpose of the funds?
Yeah, and due to the loan structure, you are sort of benefiting by providing stability, right? And, you know, I did this math yesterday, but like, you know, taking this loan structure, instead of having, you know, like sort of going on the treadmill of refinancing, right? And so having all this sort of interest accrue and paid over many years, let's say if you compare conventional and refinancing every 5 years over a 15-year term, you are able to basically keep rents where they're at, currently, and still be cost competitive with, there's still be net benefit, still have a net benefit relative to conventional financing, right? And so that's what this structure allows you to do. So it allows you to renovate your building in a way that doesn't require you to increase rents, typically sometimes at all, or even like a lot less than you would
Yeah,
have
so
otherwise.
so we would be giving taxpayer money to go into a credit pool, okay?
Which the city would manage. We would manage that pool account.
Does that money ever get back?
So
Do we ever
the
get that money
wouldn't-
back?
The money would technically never leave the city until an application comes through. That application is approved. The bank says, "Hey, this application is approved for this program." Then the funds specifically to draw down that interest rate would then be dispersed to the respective bank.
You're asking about.
And that would
it's like a
be-
grant or a loan program, essentially.
Right, and that would be
Effectively
money,
grants.
we wouldn't be able to take
Effectively
that money
a
back.
grant. Effectively a grant, yes.
And so this program would be for 10 to 20 years, or?
Yeah, 10 to
because
20
it-
years.
Well, what is it?
No, it's between 10 and 20 years, and the term you decide upon for your personal ownership goals then will reflect the loan funds you access, right? If you need 20, 30, 40, 50,000 a unit, then you would have to go sort of higher in the commitment level.
But this is only for 100,000, so how?
So the 100,000 unlocks X number of units. So then the limiting, what gets constrained is the number of units you can do, right? The $100,000 will allow you to only do X amount of units, right? If that makes sense, because that unlocks 3 to 500K, right? So depending on what landlords sign up for, then the number is like, okay, do we do 10 units, 12, 15, 20, right? There's a world in which we can go.
Right, so one of my concerns is that, let's say they do the 10-year, and 10 years goes by pretty quick. And the landlord decides to do repairs that are good for, I'm just
Yeah.
brainstorming, pick and choose that it'll be good for 20 years, but not necessarily the air conditioning or the washer and dryer, et cetera. And then you still have an issue where the landlord could technically pass on more cost to the tenants that make it, unlivable.
But it's capped. My understanding from what Jason said is that that's capped. Is that correct?
We're talking about revenue or expenses?
The pass-throughs.
The pass-through is based on increases to property taxes and insurance, again, provided best faith efforts to mitigate those costs, right? I would say that on the improvement side, generally, we look to enterprise preservation next. The enterprise, a big nonprofit that has contributed a lot to affordable housing. Like you would rank the issues and opportunities at a building, starting by like life safety, then issues that affect sort of operating costs, sort of going down the ladder down to preventative maintenance, right? And so if there's a roof about to fall, I would not want to redo the kitchens, right? And so then we would require a longer term sort of commitment, right, to fund the most pressing issue in the building, which is like, let's say in this example, the roof, like 700 Euclid was a roof collapse.
Right, and that's my concern, though, is that, let's say they do obviously the life safety issues, the taxpayers have bailed them out because they would have never been able to get this sort of financing before to do that, and after 10 years, they can just go to market rate.
No. So they're tied to a covenant, right? And
For how long?
For that duration. For
Right, what I'm saying, so after 10 years.
Well, like the idea, look, is that because we're 10 years gets you 20,000 a unit. You can't do as much with that, right? But after, in effect, we say like you've paid your dues, right, to the community, right? You've given up a decade of sort of marking rents to market. At that point, it's your property, right? And
And then that's sort of where I'm trying to get around this is, are we just buying temporary affordability? Are we just kind of kicking the can down the road, or is this just something that, it's just very temporary and we're bailing out landlords that should be doing these improvements anyways, especially if they're life safety? I don't think we should be bailing out landlords who decide not to do life safety issues.
No,
But
I would say these landlords they're funding they do care about their buildings and they care about stability. They are funding them somehow, right? I know a landlord, she's redoing her windows in South Beach on 23rd Street through her 401k, right? So they care about these properties. These are, big assets in their lives, right? They want to see them flourish, right? It's giving them a better option to be able to do so, allows them to do so in a way where, if I took money out of my 401k, I want a return on it, right? And so now I'm going to increase rents as
So, and another thing is, but don't we, by doing this, potentially create almost like an entitlement for some landlords to say, hey, there's this program out here, if, we can wait for this to do improvements and get bailed out by taxpayers. I mean, I'd like to Jason to respond.
No, I'm thinking,
Because if this, let's say it works and every property owner is saying, well, the city's just gonna give me money and all I have to do is just keep rents the same for 10 years after that, I'm
Well,
going
but
to.
I think that's a big catch right there. You have to keep rents.
But
the
just-
same.
well, I mean, you're giving up tens of thousands. Like if you take, even a $200 difference, right, across, let's say you own 25 units, and you multiply that by 10 years, right, you're giving up tens of thousands of dollars, probably 100,000, like the six figures.
Yeah, but the value isn't really like in the rent, it's in the property itself. Because, in 10 years, the property values at its current rate's gonna probably double,
I have to say, this is why I like the fact that this is a pilot program. If this program does work, the city does get a takeaway. We do get a return in investment. Is it a return on investment through a repayment? No, but it's a return on investment through housing affordability. It's no different, for example, back in October when we were talking about, the surplus funds that we had from the previous fiscal year, and we were looking, whether we were going to send that to, condominium owners and small business owners and, to all these other groups, and get no return from it, no lock-in in affordability. Here, we're actually getting something. They're just not getting this money for free. I mean, the city's investment, unlocks financing. And it's a very nominal investment by the CRA. It's not even the city, it's the CRA. It's money that would have gone to the county that is staying within the CRA. And rather than putting it into something else, we're putting it into stabilizing housing and improving buildings. I get where your concern is, but I don't think that's how the program is going to work. I don't think anyone's going to say, well, I'm just going to let my property get abandoned, so that I can potentially participate and get, a piece of the financing from the $100,000. There are safeguards in place, and I don't think there is an entitlement. I think people have to apply and they need to qualify, and there is a vetting process. Not everyone is going to be able to qualify for this. Is that correct?
It's a typical bank loan, right? So you still have to go through all the hoops.
And I would like to just add that by law, 10% of our CRA revenue must go to affordable housing. And so, to take $100,000 of that and to put it into real life situations and figure out, are there kinks that we didn't anticipate? Are there benefits that we didn't anticipate? How does it work? What do we need to tweak? Let's figure it out. This is not the only solution for affordable housing. This is a solution, one single, a solution for affordable housing. And I don't see why we wouldn't try to learn from this and grow with it if it does indeed prove to be successful the way we believe it will. It is a minuscule amount of money.
And I just also want to clarify, because I really would like, if this program works, I would like to see it expand to individual ownership. The family, the person that owns that individual unit, where they want to keep naturally occurring affordable housing. And I think the framing of it is so important because it's not a giveaway. What it is, it's an exchange. There is a public benefit here. There is a legitimate public purpose here, where yes, we're offering better financing terms, but in turn, we are getting preservation of affordability. And if I would see that in our city, we've been able to achieve massive amounts of affordable housing, then I would say, this might not be worth exploring. But knowing how difficult it is to achieve affordability in housing, or simply decent, livable, naturally occurring affordable housing, because the thing is, we do have the naturally occurring affordable housing now, but because it's affordable because it's not always well kept. And so I think there's a certain an element here of giving dignity to the people who live here, and entering into an agreement where there is an exchange, where the city does get a true public benefit, a true public purpose from this investment.
But it's only for a short period of time.
10 to 20 years.
Right.
Right.
So,
And usually, but there's always, when you look at development agreements throughout the county, you usually have covenants that run with the land that require a certain amount of units. When this is done with zoning, you look at zoning applications and at other types of regional governments, and they'll have zoning come in, but they'll have covenants that run with the land where they get a certain amount of set-asides of units for a certain AMI for a certain period of time, and that's registered through covenants. And eventually those covenants do expire. It's kind of a similar framework.
No, I completely understand, but usually when those benefits are, but my concern is that if we're going to be giving taxpayer money to landlords that are able to upgrade their building, but they normally wouldn't be able to do, at the end of 10 years, what's to say that they can just astronomically raise the rents after that? And you're displacing, and it's going to be even worse in 10 years from now than it would be from today. And I'm just, listen, we're in a committee, and so we're kind of just going back and forth. I generally
But I
like
want to
the
get this
idea.
into our landing because I have to recess the meeting at 12:45, and we still have a number of items to go through. So, yeah.
Can I say a couple points?
Sure.
You bring up phenomenal points. Look, I would say first on the sort of length of these covenants, right? Let's say covenants 40 years, right? For argument's sake, it's a very long period of time. I think then I would argue here because of the dollar amounts and the sort of leverage you're getting on a per unit per year of affordability, you're looking at hundreds of dollars to like low single digit thousands. So let's say $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 per unit per year of affordability. When you compare that, I'm not trying to pick on the NMR as an example. Let's say that was a 40-year covenant, right? My only argument
But
there.
this is only for 10, 20 years, though, or depending on what they
I'm only talking
elect
like,
to.
if you normalize for per unit per year of affordability, right? It's a $125,000 divided by 40 years. That's $3,100 per unit per year. So you're still 3x sort of cheap run when you look at per year of affordability. And then I would say additionally, if an owner's plan is to own it for the next 10, 20 years, even longer, pass it down to their kids, we want to create an experience that a landlord will want to then use this program at the end of 10 years to continue to sort of.
Are they able to sell?
I have to say that, and I really want to bring this in for a landing. If for a CRA investment of $100,000, I'm able to get any amount of units with an affordability covenant for 20 years, I'll take it. I'll take it. It's better than what we have now. I've lived in this city for 20 years. And I've only seen us lose housing affordability. I'd be happy to entertain a motion if a motion is made, and I
I'll move
can't.
it.
So the item's been moved by Commissioner Bod.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Salinas. You make good points,
I
but
mean, I'd like
there's,
to finish with some of my questions, but fine.
this item, I'm sure, will be heard at a commission, but, we have to get to other items.
Yeah.
And it feels like this is death by a thousand cuts.
I'm not trying to kill anything. I just want to get down to, just some of the questions, and I think also the public wants to know more about this. I mean, people are texting me right now, and they're kind of, they don't really understand the issue, and this is what the committee is for. I don't really want to flesh this out at a commission meeting, but, look, I'm not on this committee, so you make the call.
Yeah, I think we've all reviewed the item. I mean, the item is very well explained on the agenda. we have a presentation in the agenda about this that is very thorough. And again, over the past 20 years in Miami Beach, I have only seen us lose housing affordability. I haven't seen anything that secures for any meaningful amount of time, housing in the city, or that helps reinvest in the preservation of these properties. And for a very nominal amount, not only are we doing that, but we're also complying with the requirements of the CRA that a certain percentage of the CRA funds be reinvested into housing affordability. We have that requirement. And the best way that we can do it is by partnering with people that can unlock more private capital to make our $1 go 5 times as far as our loan individual investment would be. So with that, we can show this item. Seeing no members from the public with their hands raised on Zoom, and seeing no members of the public wishing to speak on the item, can we show this item adopted by acclamation?
And if I can just, as we're teeing up the next item, our colleague mentioned that he was getting all kinds of text messages from residents. I don't know if you guys got any, I didn't, but if anybody has questions about this, happy to reach out to any one of us, and we can share the presentation, we can share a link to this film. The goal is to make the city better for everyone, not to do things in the dark. So if anybody has questions,
So since we are in committee, I'm going to open up a public hearing on this item. Are there members of the public wishing to speak on this item, ask questions, make comments, express concerns? Please, if you're on Zoom, please raise your hand on Zoom. You're welcome to speak for 2 minutes to ask questions of the body, to ask questions of our Economic Development Director, of the presenters before us. Stephanie, do we have anyone on Zoom wishing to speak on this item?
I'm seeing none right now.
Okay. So being that there are no members of the public attending in person wishing to speak on this item, and being that we have no members of the public currently at the moment with their hands raised to speak on this item, I am going to close the public hearing on this item, which committees usually don't have a public hearing, but we had a sudden opportunity to be heard at the beginning of the meeting, and no one spoke on this item. And once again, we did a public hearing on this item now, and no one else spoke on this item. We can show this item adopted by acclamation and sent back to the commission with a positive recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
With that, colleagues, let's call items 7, 8, 9, and 10 together.
Okay, item number 7 is discuss update on GOB log cabin project. This item was sponsored by Commissioner Bott. Item number 7 is discuss relocating the log cabin to its original sites on its west lots. This item was sponsored by Commissioner Bott. The next item is discuss using portions of the log cabin for community pantry with fridge. This item was sponsored by Commissioner Dominguez. And finally, discuss future programming opportunities at the log cabin. That item was sponsored by Commissioner Bott.
Thank you, and I know Commissioner Bott may have ran to the restroom. I want to give Commissioner Bott a moment to come into chamber, so perhaps if one of my aides could, please, because these are her items. But let's just give a moment for Commissioner Bott to come in, but I'd like to take these items together because they all relate to the future of the log cabin in North Beach. And while these items are listed separately, they are all part of the broader conversation. And I think it's important that we approach them holistically rather than, separately. And it's about defining the vision of the log cabin. Where should the log cabin be located? What should be the purpose of the log cabin? What type of programming should be in it? Importantly, how do we do all of this in a way that is financially responsible and sustainable over time? So I think that these separate items that Commissioner Bott has brought forward together with, I believe, Commissioner Dominguez as well. You know, they're all carrying this common theme. So I'd like to recognize Commissioner Bott to introduce these items and guide us in the direction that we should be going in.
So forgive me, but which numbers did you?
The log cabin items.
All of them, okay.
Yeah, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Perfect. So they all sort of fold into each other, so thank you for calling them together, I appreciate that. I think the biggest issue, and we've talked about it already in different formats, is putting the log cabin back onto the west lots. And I know that as part of Plan Nobi, it was envisioned as possibly an amenity for the park. I think where residents of North Beach are is that they want it reinstalled on the west lots. I think the bigger conversation is that we are talking about how do we reimagine the west lots in their entirety as a full park. And, you know, so let's imagine that the log cabin goes back into its spot and the park concept grows out around it. We have a lot of uses that we're talking about for it. Alba has been talking with me with one of our residents who has this incredible concept that we're calling internally called the Thrive Hive, which is a sort of a loose way of describing a number of different functionalities within the log cabin facility itself, designed to predominantly focus on people sort of 20 to 50 more or less, but not exclusively. So there are a lot of different activities and resources and services and activities and activations that can be developed for use and sort of anchored out of the log cabin with the input of the community. So, you know, we'll talk more about that specifically when the item comes up. I would really like to get the log cabin up and running ASAP. I think and you said this goes up to number 10, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, so the lighting, the community pantry item can be folded into what we're calling the Thrive Hive at the log cabin with a way of having it be monitored, and it's not just accessible 24/7, which leads to problems. So with that, I will turn it over to David and to Alba.
And I'm just going to say it again for the record. I need to recess the meeting at 12:45. So if we could just be, you know, mindful of that, please, because I do want to finish all these items before we adjourn.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Commissioner. David Gomez, Director, Capital Improvements. As an update to where we stand right now with the log cabin, as you know, during the Dover Cole study, which the Commissioner referenced, it was proposed to go in the park itself. That was put forward through FERC and through the Commission, which adopted that resolution to place it at the park. We've been moving forward with that assumption. The progress of the project is about, we will receive 90% submittals this month and anticipate going out to bid early this summer.
Let me ask you this. How much will it cost to move the project, the log cabin, from its current proposed site to a new site at the West Lots?
Above and beyond our projected cost in the park, it's an additional million and change.
Million change. Should we make a motion to send this to the Finance Committee to see if we can identify funds to accommodate that, so that based on what the Finance Committee tells us, we can determine whether you know, it is indeed feasible to place it in the West Lots?
Yeah, although I will say I'm surprised because we've been talking about moving it back to West Lots for quite some time, so I'm surprised that it hasn't sort of been traveling at a parallel path.
Making the preparations to move it to the West Lots implies additional costs, not only in the construction, but in the design as well.
But
So that
wouldn't it have been prudent to make that decision before proceeding all the way to 90% completion?
without direction from Commission, I'm moving forward with the plan that we have.
And that's my concern, that, you know, it's going to be an extra $1 million that North Beach.
Up to $1 million.
Up to.
Maybe more.
I'm really frustrated because I think we've been very clear that we wanted to get it back into the West Lots, and I did not I was not aware that there hadn't been direction given to that. And that we were proceeding as if there was no desire to move it into West Lots, when it has been very clear that there has been desire to move it into West Lots.
And
So-
I have to say, my priority is the preservation of the log cabin. You know, because although the log cabin is not a designated historic property, you know, when you read the memo, it's very clear in the memo, the log cabin has long been considered a significant historic structure and a beloved community fixture for the residents of North Beach. So the priority is, how do we preserve the log cabin? That is priority number one. Now, is it on the east side of the street in the park, or is it on the west side of the street? On the west lots, to me, it's a little bit, you know, it's that there is like technicality, icing on the cake, maybe. And I think, and I think for a lot of people, it's not. For a lot of people, it'll influence what you can do with the property. But how I'm seeing it, the priority number one is to preserve this historic structure, which is not designated. And I wouldn't want to hinder its preservation, saving this project by relocating it across the street. And that's where understanding, okay, what are we going to sacrifice? What if we need $1 million, at least $1 million, to move the log cabin to the west lots? Well, then what are we not going to fund in order to achieve that? And does that ultimately jeopardize the long-term completion of this project? And so goal number one has to be preserve this, save it, bring it back to life. And then goal number two, icing on the cake, if the money is there and it doesn't take away from other needs of North Beach, well then, yeah, icing on the cake would be to put it in the west lot.
So before we move it to finance,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to have this come back. I would like to have a meeting offline with you guys and understand all kinds of things. I have a million questions. Can we find the money from CRA? If we are envisioning a whole park reimagination, do some of those costs that would be necessary to move it into West Lots be able to be absorbed by a park redo, right? So if smoothing things out and water and electric, all those things. I think we really need to understand that. I'm not going to throw it onto the mercies of another committee without having those answers.
Of course, I understand.
And I will tell you that I share your goal in preserving this. Obviously, that's.
Oh, you're the leader.
No,
I know.
but my
You've
point is
long-term
that
advocate in that.
this is a very deep wound in the North Beach psyche.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, agree with it or don't agree with it, it is a very deep, the fact that it was demolished for something that didn't materialize, that was demolished literally after we had been told it was going to come up for commission discussion the very next week, and it was demolished anyhow. I mean, the documentation is rife. We were lied to. It was offensive, and the fact that it's been sitting languishing because of a pipe dream project that never came to light is a deep, deep affront to North Beach. And so normally I would be sort of in your camp, Chair, and say, we're getting it back, and that's what matters. I want to get it back in the right place, and I want to do everything that we can to get it back in the right place.
I understand. And I think we're more or less on the same page. I just don't want to sacrifice. We have so many needs in North Beach, and that if it's going to cost us an extra $1 million plus to move it from one side to the other at this stage, so we're approaching 90% design.
Well, and that's why it should never have gotten
Yeah.
to 90%, but
I
that's
agree.
another conversation. So,
I agree.
and let's find out, Stephen, I think, just left, but we'll figure out about CRA funds and what we can do in that front. So with your permission, can we defer it?
Yeah, we can defer 7, which goes together with 8, which goes together, I guess, I want to talk about 9, but 7 and 8, we can defer that, but I see, I'm going to, on 7 and 8, which is, 7 is the update on the geo bond for the log cabin project, and 8 is discussion relocating the log cabin to its original site on the West Lots. Before we defer this item, I'm going to open up the floor to anyone wishing to speak. Seeing none in person, I see Daniel Serraldo with his hand raised on Zoom. Good morning, good afternoon, Daniel. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioners. Daniel Serraldo, 730 10th Street. And the log cabin is an incredibly important part of North Beach. Thank you both for your concern and continued interest in its preservation. I did want to mention personally that I don't have an issue with it going in its planned location in the park. One thing that I remember when they were discussing it is that the park has a lot of foot traffic of people going all the way even from Surfside and down and from Mid-Beach and up. And so if the log cabin stays there, it'll really be, I think, more visible and more used. And that was one of the challenges when it was in the West Lots. I also just want to mention that it is on the agenda for finance as a future item, even on the April 1st agenda, F8. So I would suggest keeping it where it's currently planned, but either way, looking forward to seeing it reconstructed. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Clive, you have your hand raised on Zoom. Please unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes to speak. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Commissioner Platt, for bringing this up. You know, I feel like Neil Armstrong going back in time that the Eagles landed. Well, the Eagles almost landed, but I think it's landed on the wrong side of the street, and I think we have the opportunity to put it back where it was originally intentioned. I don't understand how it came about to get moved into the park, and I also don't understand that the GeoBond, I mean, I've been sitting with this thing for a long time, over 8 years, with Karen Riva back when the GeoBond was discussed, and they came up with the financing for it, and the intention at that time was to put it in the West Lot. It wasn't in the park, and the money that was set aside to it in the GeoBond was specifically for its location in the West Lots. So I don't understand how all of a sudden now it's another $1 million to put it back where it was originally proposed, because that kind of bothered me, but we got to get it back. It's a wound, like the Commissioner Bat said, in North Beach. People were lied to on this thing. It's been languishing for years. Let's just get it done, please. I don't know why it's taken this long. I know people are busy. There's a lot of things on your plates, but the money's there. I don't know why it's another $1 million to put it back where it was originally intended. It just doesn't make sense to me. And as far as the use of it, we're happy to have all the use. It's a great community center for the people in North Beach. It's a gathering spot, always has been. I mean, I went for years there at the holiday time to buy the wreaths and things. And you're going to have things across the street in the park. It just doesn't fit there. That's not what the original intention was. Please, let's just put it back where it belongs. Thank you.
Clive, before you leave us, a quick question, because you did
Yes,
mention that bringing it back was a priority for you, and thank you for the work, your collaboration with the GeoBond Oversight Committee. If let's say there is this added cost, does your opinion change at that point? Should it still go on the West Lots if there is this added $1 million cost, knowing that might take away from something else that we might be able to fund, some other needs we might be able to fund in North Beach?
We're talking about history here, sir. It's was built there, was intended there, stood there for so many years. No hurricanes could knock it down. The city was able to knock it down. It needs to go back where it belongs. And I don't understand why there's another $1 million cost on top of a $2 million price already. It just seems exorbitant, and I question that. But that's not my division. That's not my place. I implore you, please put it back where it belongs, where it originated, and that's what North Beach wants. We have petitions, and people have been following this for years. Nobody's giving up on it, so please put it back where it belongs.
And thank you for your participation in today's meeting. Any other members of the public wishing to speak on items 7 and 8? Seeing no other members of the public wishing to speak on this item, let's show this item deferred. Commissioner Bott, would you like, perhaps we can host, it's up to you, a Zoom meeting where we can have a presentation from staff and get feedback from the community? It's up to you. I'll take your lead. If there's time for it, we can do it. If there's not time, because we want to bring it back to committee before the wheels keep turning. I'll defer to you. Yeah.
sorry, let's play that by ear and let me get with David and his team and,
I wouldn't want that to hold up the process of the item moving through committee.
right. I think we need to just understand where we are. I'm literally texting our Director of Economic Development to find out about CRA funds, so this is super high priority.
With that, we can show this item deferred. Stephanie, let's call item number 9, which we have already called, but that's discussing,
Using portion of the log cabin for community pantry with fridge.
yes, and I know this is Commissioner Dominguez's item. And I respectfully, I'd like to defer this also to a time when Commissioner Dominguez is present, because I think there's a way to achieve the goal of supporting the needs of the community, because there are a lot of individuals that do have food insecurities, that could benefit from this program. I'm not sure if doing it through a pantry is the best approach. Alba, I'd like you to see, our partnership with Feeding South Florida and with Farm Share. And for the amount of money that it would cost us to operate a pantry, could we do a more modest type of distribution? Because a food pantry serves how many people? Maybe a few hundred people. How many people do we anticipate a food pantry would serve?
Good afternoon, Alba Terre, Office of Housing and Community Services. It would really depend on the size of the structure of the pantry first, and then with that, we would have to have partnerships to build that capacity with what the pantry could serve. So maybe possibly 20, 30, 40. It really would depend on the size of the pantry.
So what I would encourage us to do is perhaps if you could meet with the item sponsor and see, what other alternatives there could be. How could we use the proposed dollars that would go towards operating a pantry, towards partnering with entities that already specialize in providing support to this segment of the population, whether it be Farm Share or Feeding South Florida. A lot of times when we see their events, they tend to be these big, massive events that tend to be very logistically intense. But perhaps, we can do something more boutique to serve the population in North Beach and get a good return on investment without having to recreate the wheel. Because the reality is that there are indeed, a large number of residents in North Beach and in Miami Beach, just how they're facing affordability challenges at home. They're facing food insecurities. We need to address it. I just don't know if the pantry model is the best one. Commissioner Abad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious because I know you've been working on how to do it if we were to do it at the log cabin. And I do think actually item number 11, where we're going to talk about the Thrive Hive concept, could lend itself to having this kind of in and out service of a pantry. So maybe we put those together and defer them together.
Bring them back?
Yeah, bring them back, because that would allow us to explain in better detail what the Thrive Hive is, how it would work, and how this could be a component of it, as well as, a separate but related conversation about, or the food services part could be perhaps a different model entirely. But I think it's more useful to have it in context rather than, in the metaphorical shell of an empty log cabin, which I don't think anybody is envisioning.
Okay. So with that, we can show the two items relating to the use of the log cabin, parts of it for a community pantry, and to discuss the future programming opportunities of the log cabin. We can show the deferred. And before we officially defer it, are there any members of the public wishing to speak on these items, these two items? Seeing none in person and none on Zoom with their hand raised, we can show those two items deferred.
And are these two sets of deferrals to the next month?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's my intent. I do want to keep these North Beach items together because it's usually, I think it's beneficial, especially it's usually the same stakeholders. So I want to be courteous to them by keeping them together. Potential improvements to the lighting at the west lots to enhance public safety. Commissioner Bott, you had placed this item on the agenda. You want to guide us through this?
Yeah, this one and number 12 actually are, again, kind of go together. And I think that I think want to wait until we talk further about reimagining West Lots as a park in its entirety. I mean, I would like to know, Rodney, is there stuff that can be done tomorrow for no money that we can see some improvement in the interim? Because, you know, it's going to take a year or two to get this park built. But I think the bigger goal is how do we reimagine the West Lots as a park with better lighting, better safety, better pedestrianization, better bicycle modality, you know, better functionality and services and all those things. You know, I think,
Any quick wins there,
yeah,
Rodney?
low-hanging fruit.
Good afternoon, Rodney Knowles, the Assistant Director for Public Works. I think as far as quick wins go, our hands are kind of tied because we have a variety of uses happening on the West Lots. For example, the composting, ocean rescue, parking lots, et cetera. And we really think that the best path forward is a photometric study that's going to give us a true estimate of what it's going to take to do this right. Also taking into consideration sea turtle lighting, because the east-facing elevation from the park across the street, that varies as you're going from south to north, and any lighting that we put in those lots can't be seen from the beach. So if we're going to do it, I think we should do it right, and if we can identify funding to pay for that initial study, I think we'll be on the right course.
Yeah, so my intent, I think my vision is to not spend money on a study for something that perhaps would not be necessary or would be folded in as part of a park master plan, right? Because I don't want to spend money on lighting if we're just going to have to redo it as part of a park. So I think that my goal I would rather focus on fast tracking the planning process for the park and getting this done as part of that. What's your thought on that, Mr. Chairman?
That sounds good. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll bring items 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and 12 back to committee together. So in essence, this second portion of the agenda, we still have work to do here.
And I think 10 and 12 might need a little bit more time because we just need to figure out what's going on with the park's desire.
Yeah, as I mentioned, and this is for staff and for members of the committee and my colleagues in general, I'm only going to be placing items on the agenda once the sponsoring commissioner feels comfortable with the item being placed on the agenda. Right now, we have a system where a lot of times staff and the administration work on items, they get approved by the city manager, then they end up on committee agendas. But the sponsoring commissioner doesn't know that their item is being placed on the agenda. And the sponsoring commissioner may not have even seen the memo and might want to make tweaks to the program and all that. So once we get confirmation from the sponsoring commissioner that they're ready for their item, that they sign off on their item, because it's ultimately their item that they're sponsoring, I'm not going to be placing it on the agenda. So once we're ready for that, you let Stephanie know, and we'll bring it back. With that, we have gone through many items on this agenda. I want to thank staff for your collaboration, for your partnership, for the amazing work that you guys have done during spring break. I'd be remiss not to mention our Fire Chief Digna Abella, who has been in the audience, and the 66% reduction in incidents that Digna's team, the Chief Abello's team, has had to deal during spring break. It's incredible, the incredible progress that has happened in our city during the month of March. So thank you to all the employees of the City of Miami Beach that sacrificed tremendous amount of time from your families to be here, to keep our visitors safe, and to keep such a great positive vibe in our community. It's not lost on us and on the residents, the great work that you've done. And with that, I want to adjourn today's meeting, wish all who are celebrating a meaningful Holy Week as we prepare for Easter, for our Jewish community, Chag Pesach. Chag Pesach Sameach. Is that right, Tanya? There you go. Pesach. There you go. A meaningful Passover as they celebrate the liberation from Egypt. And thank you to everyone who participated in today's meeting. Our meeting is adjourned.